Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Thank you for joining me once again for one of these diary entries. This time we are going to be going through a little review. A review of what, you might say? Well, we've got some class notes to do, and we have some new commander decks from the new Secrets of Strixhaven set that had come out, and we're going to be going over all 5 of them there because we've got one for each of the different I'm not entirely sure what they would be called, like houses in Harry Potter or something like that. But, this is essentially our Magic the Gathering Harry Potter edition. And it looks like they might be focused around the original students of Strixhaven that we met in the first Strixhaven set, because all of them have on their covers the student that was related to that particular school. So we saw in the previous unboxing for the collector video, one of the commanders that could be coming from the Quandrix, but that was about it. We saw some of the general cards, but we didn't really see much of any of the other commanders. So that's what we're going to take a look. All of them generally tell us a little bit something about it. White-black for Silver Quill, and it looks like it's going to be, it's saying aura control, so, maybe a lot of auras on your creatures, not the JoJo kind though, and make foes fight each other, so maybe a little bit of, not taunt, I'm trying to remember what that one was called, the mechanic that lets you have force them to attack on the turn, but they can't attack you. And it looks like we've got like a little Silver Quill symbol to rip down here. And silvery barbs, that is a reference for D&D, because that is a reaction that you can get in it. And that's a, it has the cover there, but I really like the symbolism that they do on that one there. And here it will probably just have them full art. Killian, and Scriv is going to be our secondary commander. Now they have done away with the not bonus packs. They were like what would you call them? They were sample packs. That's what they were. They did away with the sample packs, which were like you would get a common or uncommon, like a rare, and then like another card to kind of tell you what was going on. Generally, these do have like some sort of thing to open them up. It looks like they forgot to put that perforation on this one here, so we're just gonna have to do with it what we can. So gonna be going through each of these decks, see what they can do, and just kind of giving a general review of how I feel of them afterwards. So let's start off with Killian, Decisive Mentor. So it looks like, going into second year, he's going to be starting to teach some of his other fellow students how to work the magic. 1 in white and a black. 2/3, Legendary Human Warlock. Whenever an enchantment you control ETBs, tap up to 1 target creature and goad it. That's what it is, goad. So, yeah, putting out a lot of enchantments. You goad creatures, but also tapping them down makes it so that you're going to be able to get in and do some attacks yourself onto your opponents there, so that's always nice. And whenever 1 or more creatures that are enchanted by an aura you control attack, you draw a card. So that can mean both ones that are on your stuff as well as on your opponent's stuff. So what I'm seeing here is, you could have some of the impetuses that you put on your opponent's things that whenever they attack, you get some sort of benefit. And same thing here, you put it on one of your opponent's things to goad it, and then you get some sort of bonus, but then whenever they attack again, you get the additional bonus of drawing more cards. That's always nice. But it says whenever 1 or more attacks, you draw a card. So, if you have 3 enchanted creatures on your field, you attack in, you still only draw 1 card, even though it's 3 creatures. But yeah, it's a nifty little one to try to tap down defenders to be able to goad creatures that maybe are more interested in sitting back and just letting their effects go through. Just really helpful in trying to get that little bit of extra push in. And it looks like on the outside, it does show both of our commanders, because this was behind Killian in the artwork on the front, but we didn't see it in his artwork on the card. So Scriv, the Obligator, 2, a white and a black for a 2/3 legendary Inkling bird. Wonder if this is related to him at all, or it's just, it's just there. It's one of the familiars of the house. Flying and Death Touch, whenever it enters or attacks, you create a white aura enchantment token named Contract attached to target creature an opponent controls. Aha, again, going in with the Killian of being on your opponent's creatures there to make them attack and get some bonuses on it. It's an enchantment that enters, so then you also get to tap them down and goad them. The token has enchant creature, and whenever enchanted creature attacks, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn, only when it's attacking, and if it's attacking one of your opponents. So if it's attacking you, it doesn't get the bonus. If it otherwise, its controller loses 2 life. So they get the choice of it gets pumped up when attacking one of your other opponents there, or they take 2 damage because they're doing it. Try to get it out on a lot of different guys. You can do that there. That's very nice. It's only those contract enchantments. It's not just enchantments in general. So, yeah, they work very well together of this enchanting their stuff and then getting the benefits afterwards with Killian. Now, this was one that we had seen previously that is very, very good. Iganjo Dinosaurian, 2 and a white, 2/3 legendary, not legendary, just a Fox Advisor. Vigilance, whenever you attack with 2 or more creatures, this becomes prepared, and then you get replenished. Return all enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. If this deck is very heavily focused on enchantments, that really makes a whole lot of sense. Now, I'd thought originally that it might be in Lorehold, but as we're seeing, it's going to be in our Silver Quill instead. So very, very good card. Always good to get more of those. Hopefully when we open up the other box of collectors that we can get another one, because it's really good. Forum Filibuster, 3 and double white enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you create a 2/1 white and black Inkling creature token with flying. When you do, return up to 1 target aura or enchantment or equipment card from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to that token. Okay, so you have a lot of recursion here as well as creating tokens. So it only attaches to those, so unfortunately you can't be moving them around afterwards, but consistently getting an extra 1 can kind of help with the Scriv there of having more attackers. It can help with the Iganjo Dinosaurian, because you need to attack with at least 2 things, and you're wanting to attack with Scriv. So this gives you your second one to be able to get Iganjo Dinosaurian prepared. That's very nice. And, just being able to consistently get things out of your graveyard. Now, it's only auras. It's not just enchantments in general. So that's one thing that you have to be mindful of. Herald of Amity, 3 and a white, 2/2 Griffin with flying. When it ETBs, exile top 8 cards of your library. You may cast an aura spell from among them without paying its mana cost. The rest go to the bottom of your library in a random order. So pay 4 to get a random aura, and it can cost more than 4. That's pretty good. When this creature attacks, it gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of auras you control. Again, that's very, very good. So you already get it out. So, when it attacks, it becomes a 4 mana 3/3 if all you've got is the first one, but you're probably going to be doing a whole lot more. So, big attacker to be able to help out with all of stuff. It's flyers. That's good. Changing Loyalty, 1 and a black for an enchantment aura. Here's one of our auras. With flash, okay, you get it out. Replicate 2, okay. When you cast a spell, copy it for each time you paid its replicate cost. You may choose new targets for the copies. Copies become tokens. You enchant creature, and when enchanted creature dies, return it to the battlefield under your control. Okay, so it has a little bit of that that betrays effect of you can put this on If there's going to be a big board wipe, you can flash this in, protect your creatures, or get your opponent's best things that might be good for you as well, to be able to stack it all on top and bring it all back so that you can get all of the best creatures. You can protect your own from one-sided board wipes. You can put it on your creatures if you need to block in combat. You can put them onto your opponent's creatures. All in all, pretty darn good. And you could do it ahead of time with the Killian stuff, so that they're attacking in and getting all of the different benefits for the drawing the card. But when they do end up dying, then you get them yourself. And here we are, what I had talked about, an impetus, but it looks like this is a new one, Coercive Impetus. 2 and a black for an enchantment aura with enchant creature. They get +1/+1 and are goaded, and whenever a enchanted creature attacks, you draw a card and lose 1 life. So you goad them, make them a little bit more powerful, and you get a Phyrexian Arena effect each turn. Not my favorite one. I kind of like Shiny Impetus the best, getting the treasure tokens, be able to help cast some stuff. And a saga for us, or no, a class, not a saga. Intermediate Chirography. 1 and a black. Saga, when it ETB, not saga, class. When this class ETBs, you create a 2/1 white and black Inkling creature token with flying. We've seen a lot of those. 1 and a black, you can level this up to level 2. Whenever you lose life for the first time each turn, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Okay. And after it becomes level 2, you can pay 2 and a black to get it to level 3. So, each turn, if you want to, you can pump this up. Beginning of each end step, if a modified creature died under your control this turn, you create a 2/1 white and black Inkling creature token with flying. So, not the most over-the-top card there, but being able to consistently take damage, put a +1/+1 on something that you have. Theoretically, you can put it on the Inkling that you have. When that one dies, then you create another one. Okay, just a little bit of extra recursion. We did see this one in our previous opening, Defacing Duskmage, white and black, 2/2, Dog Warlock, Death Touch. Opponent draws their second card each turn. This becomes prepared, and you get Vandal's Edict, what lets you draw 2 cards, and then every player loses 2 life. So, not just you, but everyone takes the damage. Very nice of being able to just get a whole bunch of extra cards, but also dealing damage symmetrically across the board. And it looks like we're going to get a couple of new lands here. Eclipse Steep, or Steppe, Plains Swamp Land, that just enters tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. So, slow land there, try to get them all out. We'll certainly take more good lands like that. And we have also got Turbulent Moor, a plain swamp that enters tapped unless your opponents control 8 or more lands. So if they are very much ramping up, we're going to see a whole cycle of those. It looks like we keep on getting some new ones. Umbral Expanse, a plain swamp, enters tapped that you can cycle away for 2. Very, very beautiful, with kind of the reflecting of it all turning into kind of like black suns almost, or black holes. Very, very beautiful card. Oh, and it's also coming with a Fabled Passage in a commander deck. Okay, it looking like they're pushing these out to being able to allow people to use them. It's a land that taps to sack it. Search for a basic land, you put it on the battlefield tapped. But if you control 4 or more lands, you untap that land instead. So potentially getting a free untapped land, it's always nice. And if we're doing auras, why not do a big, since it's Emrakul, I was going to say a big daddy one, but no, this is a big mommy one. Eldrazi Conscription, 8 mana for a kindred enchantment, Eldrazi Aura. Enchanted creature gets +10/+10, has trample and Annihilator 2. Oh my goodness. Big, 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 and scary, scary, scary. You want those. Okay. Going into some of the ones that are not quite as new. Johnny's Chosen, enchantment ETBs, you get a 2/2 white cat creature token. If it's an enchantment is an aura, you may attach it to the token. Honestly, you're probably not going to do it most of the time there. I mean, I guess you could do it with the Contract, I wonder if that can supersede on Scriv, being able to put it onto your 2/2 cat creature instead of putting it onto one of your opponent's things. That's something that I could be thinking of. Angelic Destiny, another aura to boost things up. Get +4/+4. Flying First Strike is an angel, and when it dies, you return this to your hand so you can keep on playing it out. Very, very nice. Archon of Sun's Grace, flying lifelink. Other Pegasus creatures you control have lifelink. It really only goes in with its constellation effect of enchantment DTBs. You get a 2/2 white Pegasus creature token with flying. So, you can keep on putting your enchantments out, and then you keep on getting the Pegasi, and then you keep on getting, lifelinkers to kind of help and block whatnot. Armored Sky Hunter, flying attacks. Look at the top 6 card of your library. You can put an aura or equipment card from among them to the battlefield. Equipment put on this way, you may attach it to a creature you control. Put the rest of those cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. Now, why it talks about equipments and not auras is because when an aura comes in, it says enchant target whatever, and you can do it. But equipments do not. But hey, that's a really good effect of being able to supersede the equip cost. Combat Calligrapher, bird cleric to 3/3 flyer. Inklings can't attack you or planeswalkers you control, and whenever a player attacks one of your opponents, they create a tapped 2/1 white and black Inkling creature token with flying that's attacking that opponent. So they can get a big board up, but until this is removed, those Inklings can't attack you. And if your opponent does something like use Ink Shield to protect themselves and create a bunch of Inklings, well, then those ones can't attack you either with this. So that's also nice. Eidolon of Countless Battles. An enchantment creature with Bestow, so you can make it an aura spell. They get a +1/+1 for each creature you control and +1/+1 for each aura you control, depending on if this is an aura or it's just the card itself. So, big pumps. Fireman Commando, flyer, attacks with 2 or more creatures. You draw a card. Whenever another player attacks with 2 or more creatures, they draw a card if none of those attacked you. So, a little bit of a group hug effect of like, don't attack me and I'll give you some bonuses there. So that's always nice. Gift of Immortality from Theros, aura that equips, not equips, enchants. Enchanted creature dies, return to the battlefield under its owner's control, and then at the beginning of the next end step, you put this on. So essentially they have to have 2 removal spells to get rid of it in its entirety there. So, nice little one. Core Spirit Dancer with a little bit new artwork. Gets +2/+2 for each aura attached to it, and whenever you cast an aura spell, you may draw a card. So even if you don't put anything on this, just drawing some cards for all the auras that you're putting on is nice. And another big card here, unexpectedly, in it is Land Tax. It's a good one there to be able to have people get. 1 white for enchantment, beginning of your upkeep. If an opponent controls more lands than you can search your library for up to 3 basic lands and reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle. Yeah, that's really, really good. So, you can always stay up to date, especially if you're sacking lands, bouncing lands, then you're going to be able to keep up with all of it. Mangara, the Diplomat there, legendary creature, lifelink, opponent attacks with creatures. If 2 or more are attacking you and or planeswalkers you control, you draw a card, and whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, you draw a card. So just kind of getting a little bit of extra card draw within your stuff is always nice. Nils, Disciple Enforcer, beginning of your end step for each player. You put a +1/+1 on up to 1 target creature they control. For each player, you put a +1. You, the player that controls this, puts a +1/+1 on target creature they control. Each creature with 1 or more counters on it can't attack you or planeswalkers you control unless its controller pays X, where X is the number of counters on that creature. So you can kind of get around decks that might put a lot of +1/+1 counters on it, because then it's like, well, you don't have infinite mana. Well, you can't attack me with that there. And it's just counters in general. It's not ones that you put onto it, but being able to say like, hey, yeah, sorry, like you get a little bit more of a propaganda effect. That's always nice. Pearl Ear, Imperial Advisor, lifelink, enchantment spells you cast have affinity for auras. So the more that you have out there, the less that they cost. I mean, you get 8 out there, and then Eldrazi Conscription, which is a colorless spell and just costs 8 generic mana, you can potentially play out for free, which is nice. Whenever you cast an aura spell that targets a modified permanent you control, you draw a card, so ones that already have auras on them or anything that has like +1/+1 counters on it. Honestly, within this, it's a really, really good way to do that one. You could potentially put extra contracts on things with Scriv so that it gets the Pearlier effect. Promise of Loyalty, sorcery, you put a vow counter on a creature. Each player puts a vow counter on a creature they control and sacrifices the rest. Each of those creatures can't attack you or planeswalkers you control as long as it has a vow counter on it. So very, very good. Everyone chooses something that they want to keep. Board wipes the rest, and then the remaining ones can't attack you. It's a very, very nifty board wipe to be able to do, and then, they can no longer attack you unless they somehow remove those tokens. Redemption Arc, enchant creature. They have indestructible and goaded, and for 1 and a white, you can exile enchanted creature. So you can put it onto your own things so that, they have indestructible, but they got to attack each turn. Or you can put it on your opponent's things so they have to attack each turn, but attack someone else. And later on, if you want to, you can exile it there, the exile effect, because it's your enchantment that's putting on, only you can pay that effect. Shielded by Faith, just a good old aura. Enchant them, they get indestructible, and whenever a creature enters, you can swap this over to that creature. So, you can move it over to anybody that you want. So, most vulnerable ones you can keep on going with. Songbird's Blessing, another enchantment aura, enchant creature. Enchanted creature attacks, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal an aura. You may put it onto the battlefield. If you don't, you put it in your hand, and the rest go on the bottom of the library in a random order. So you can keep on getting more and more auras out and putting them out there, or just keeping them in your hand for something later on. It's another nifty one there of being able to go through your decks. SRAM, legendary creature, you cast an aura, equipment, or vehicle spell, you draw a card. I mean, casting a lot of auras, then you get it. Now, it doesn't say whenever you put one onto the battlefield, so it does not really work with Scriv's contract, so that's the one thing that you got to worry about there. Starfield Mystic, enchantment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, so just making them cheaper, always nice. Enchantment you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield. You put a +1/+1 on this, get bigger if they go away. So if this contract that you get from Scriv, the creature gets destroyed, then hey, that also works with it there. Winds of Wrath, big board wipe effect there. Destroy all creatures that aren't enchanted. They can't be regenerated. So all of your stuff that you've put stuff on, or things that you've put impetuses or contracts on, it doesn't get rid of those, so they can keep on attacking in your opponents. Doomwake Giant, enchantment creature giant. Whenever this creature or another enchantment you control ETBs, creatures your opponents control get -1/-1 until in a turn. So it's just when they enter, so that also works with the contracts there to try to get them going. And putting out a lot of enchantments, you can wipe the board a little bit like you would with Massacre Girl, and it's in -1/-1, so it gets around indestructible, it gets around hexproof, it gets around ward, shroud. So it's a good way of trying to bully people out of creatures on their field, especially if they've got something small and it doesn't affect your own. Ghoulish Impetus, another one of our impetus that we've seen. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1, death touch, goaded, and when it dies, return it to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step. So, again, you can put this onto one of your opponent's things to have them keep on attacking in and taking something with it because of the death touch. But when it dies, it doesn't. Oh, sorry. When the enchanted creature dies, you return this card, not the enchanted creature. So you return Ghoulish Impetus to the battlefield to make another one of the creatures that your opponents have attacking other people's. And okay, that I like that better that way. Keen Duelist, we've seen this one before. Also good, beginning of your upkeep, you and target opponent each reveal top card of your library. You each lose life equal to the mana value of the card revealed by the other player, and then you put the card you revealed into your hand. So, you could get a land flipped over to take 0. You could flip over Eldrazi Conscription and take 8. It's just all whatever you have in mind. You could have something that lets you see the top of your deck so you know what's there, so you know how much is being inflicted onto another person. Anguished Unmaking, good old classic removal from Shadows over Innistrad. Just exile target non-land permanent. You lose 3 life, but it's, get rid of anything for 3 life. And we have one of the most complicated cards, I think, that's around, Brina the Demagogue, legendary Bird Warlock from the previous commander decks. Flying, whenever a player attacks one of your opponents, if that opponent has more life than another of your opponents, that attacking player draws a card and you put 2 +1/+1 counters on a creature you control. So what it comes down to is you can get this effect as well. Your opponents can get this effect as well. So it's a little bit group huggy. So whenever a player, yourself or one of your opponents, attacks one of your opponents, and that opponent has more life than another one of your opponents. So if you have more life than anybody, it doesn't matter. It's just if the attacking person has less life, or the person that they're not attacking has less life than the person that is getting attacked, then they get the benefit, which is drawing a card. And then you get to put 2 +1/+1s on any creature you control, which could be Brina, but it could be something else there. And it gives a little bit of incentive for them to attack someone other than you. And I mean, if you've already got impetuses and all of those things on it, then you're already getting other benefits from it. But, complicated card, but can be really, really good. And we're also going to be getting one of our cards from Eldraine, Ariete of the Charmed Apple. Legendary creature, human warlock. Each creature that's enchanted by an aura you control can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. So you put that contract on them, well, even afterwards, if, it doesn't say goad them, it just says, if they attack you, they lose 2 life, but now they can't attack. And at the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of auras you control. So whether that's on them, whether that's on your creatures, their creatures, doesn't really matter. It's just a way to just drain them slowly. You got 2 auras out on the battlefield. Everybody take 2, I gain 2. Then you start getting more, 4, 6, potentially 10, and it can be deadly. And speaking of Ink Shield from earlier, we get it here again. A little bit of a defensive spell, instant that prevents all combat damage that would be dealt to you this turn, and for each damage prevented this way, you create a 2/1 white and black Inkling creature token with flying, so that you get a really big board afterwards. Honestly, very, very nice protection spell. And we're also going to be getting the dragon himself from the original set, Shadrick Silverquill. Maybe we'll get the other ones as well, because I didn't open up a whole lot of the original Strixhaven. It was one of the sets that was kind of in standard when I kind of got back into Magic. So I didn't really get a whole lot of them. I think I did get Shadrick's, though. But legendary creature, Elder Dragon, flying, first strike, beginning of combat. On your turn, you may choose 2 of these. Each mode must target a different player. Target player gets a 2/1 white and black Inkling token with flying. Target player draws a card and loses a life, and target player puts a +1/+1 in each creature they control. So you just choose whatever one is best for you, and then you get to decide which one is the worst thing for other people. Now, drawing a card is going to be pretty impactful, so that might be something that you do, but maybe you can negotiate out with people of, hey, I'll give you this if you don't do this for me, and maybe you can make a little bit of a deal. And also, we're going to get a little bit of Tomic, which I can't remember if I think this might have been the better one there. Legendary creature with affinity for planeswalkers. Costs 1 less to cast for each planeswalker you control. I mean, it only costs 1 generic color, so you can only reduce it by 1 anyway. Flying Vigilance, 2/4, whenever an opponent attacks with creatures, if 2 or more of those creatures are attacking you and are planeswalkers you control, that opponent loses 3 life and you draw a card. So a little bit of kind of going along with the Mangara effect there of if they attack you with 2 creatures, then you get to draw a card. But if you also have this as well, then it's like, oh, well, not only do I get to draw a card, I draw a second card and you lose 3 life because of it. So again, a bit more of a deterrent for them to be attacking into you. And if you're gaining a whole lot of life and they kind of have to, then it's like, okay, again, take the downsides for it to be able to get in there. Vanishing Verse, looks like just a good old exile target monocolored permanent there. So trying to get rid of something that might be super impactful on the board there. Because lands aren't colored, you can't target lands, but, a nice little removal for it. And it looks like we're going to be getting some of our lands. Dual colored Caves of Koilos, Desolate Mire to kind of filter lands. It's going to filter out your mana for you. Exotic Orchard, being able to get an extra mana from one of your opponent's colors. Another filter land in Fetid Heath. I really like the filter lands. Isolated Chapel, another dual land. Snarl, dual land, can enter untapped if you got a swamp or a plains in your hand. Scryland, War Room to be able to draw an extra card. You just got to pay life equal to the number of colors in your commander's color identity. So 2. I'm just thinking if you've got some sort of like Eldrazi colorless artifact deck there and just pay 3 to draw a card. So not too bad. Okay, and then some uncommons here. Flickering Ward, another aura, choose a color. Enchanted creature has protection from it. Doesn't remove this if you choose white, and then you can pay white to return this to its owner's hand. So if the creature is going to get destroyed, then you can put this on something else, or you can return it to your hand to then play it so that you can protect something else that's really good. Fallen Ideal. Okay, so I thought that they were the same. No, Fallen Ideal. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature has flying and sacrifice a creature to get +2/+1 until end of turn. When it is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, return it to the owner's hand. Okay, so you can put on your opponent's stuff if you really want to there, or you put it onto something and you get a free sack outlet, so that can also be very good. Screams from Within. Enchant aura. Enchanted creature gets -1/-1. When they die, return it from your graveyard to the battlefield. Oh, return this card. I keep on reading it wrong. Return this from your graveyard to the battlefield. So, just a very generic one of, just making one of your opponent's stuff just a little bit smaller. And then, when it dies, you put it, onto your, back onto the battlefield to kind of make another thing a little bit smaller. Arcane Signet, getting a little ramp there. Soul Ring for another ramp. That's very beautiful with the little gate that it's got behind it. All of those star arches. Okay. Command Tower. Now this was the artwork that I think was a promo for the books there. Forum of Amity, the Surveil land for the double colors, Terramorphic Expanse with its nice artworks, Chains of Custody. I think that this is sort of a like a Fiend Hunter effect there. Enchant creature you control. When it enters, exile target non-land permanent opponent controls until this leaves the battlefield. Yep. And then enchant creature also gets Ward 2, so it makes it a little bit harder to get rid of. So kind of, and I think Fiend Hunter was 2 white and a colorless. So, same mana, but, you're making it a little bit harder for them to get rid of. Reminds me a lot of Chain to the Rocks. Darksteel Mutation, make them lose their abilities, make them lose their creature types. Their creature types, base power toughness 0/1, and it just becomes an indestructible creature. Very, very nice removal, especially on like a commander or something. Ghostly Prison, that propaganda effect, make it more difficult to attack you. Martial Impetus, make them a little bit bigger, and goad them. Whenever enchanted creature attacks, each other creature that's attacking one of your opponents also gets buffed up, so, encourages them to attack other people. Fiend's Guidance, another enchant creature. They get a little bit of a bonus, and you can cast this from the graveyard by paying a little bit extra, so it doesn't really stay dead. Sage's Reverie. When it ETBs, draw a card for each aura that's attached to a creature. So not the creature that this is attached to, but just a creature. And the enchanted creature gets the +1/+1 for each aura you control that's attached to a creature. So very similar to one that we saw before, but you can have auras that enchant players, so it's very mindful that it's only the ones that are attached to creatures. Secret Rendezvous, we saw the card that was the evolution of this. Research Partners, I think it was, that had this as its prepared spell. So, really cute to bring it back and see that artwork. Sentinel Eyes, looks like we're, back on Theros' underworld. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and vigilance, and then you can escape it out to play it from your graveyard again. Sheltered by Ghosts, which was, I think, one of the big ones that came out of the Duskmourn. Enchanted creature you control. When it ETBs, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until this leaves the battlefield. Enchanted creature gets +1/+0, has lifelink and ward 2. So very similar to the other one that we had, the Warden, Chains of Custody. I got right to it there. But I mean, the big difference that you see is that they're the same, but this is an uncommon, so it costs 1 less, and then you also give lifelink and +1/+0 to that creature, whereas this one, it's just the removal aspect of it. Spirit Mantle, +1/+1 protection from creatures, being able to get in and hit people. Transcendent Envoy, aura spells cost 1 less to cast, so make them cheaper. Animate Dead, bring something back from the graveyard. They just get -1/-0. Hateful Eidolon, lifelink, whenever enchanted creature you control dies, you draw a card for each aura you controlled that was attached to it, and a lot of these auras can be brought back somehow, so you're just getting some bonuses on it. Parasitic Impetus, they get +2/+2 and goaded. They attack, then the person that controls the creature loses 2 life, and then you gain 2 life, so a little bit more of that. Fracture, which we actually saw both versions of in the Mythical Archive. They are just destroy target artifact, enchantment, or planeswalker, so get rid of one of those pesky ones. Killian, Ink Duelist, who this was the original version of him there. Lifelink, menace, spells you cast that target a creature cost 2 less to cast, so a lot of those auras, they enchant a target creature, so they end up costing 2 less, so another good way of being able to do that. Felwar Stone, a little bit more mana ramp. Talisman of Hierarchy, more mana ramp. Arcane Lighthouse, being able to make things lose hexproof and shout, and then can't have them back until end of turn there. So, be able to target them is nice. Bajuka Bog for a little bit of graveyard hate. Path of Ancestry, they always have these in there. Get a little bit of extra scrying in there to, get your stuff. Scryland, being able to do a consistent scry on that land there. Study Hall, 1 and tap, add 1 mana of any color. When you spend this to cast your commander, scry X, where X is the number of times it's been cast from the command zone. Okay, so, your commander gets cast multiple times, and you can scry a whole lot more. Okay, that's nice. Just a plain swamp, dual land there, and a lot of basic plains and swamps to be able to get us through. And we're going to have a lot of tokens here, a lot of Inklings and contracts, because we saw Killian and Scriv creating a whole lot of those, some copies, some cats, some Pegasi. So overall, I think it's a very control-heavy deck there, which I don't mind. I think that it can work quite well. Probably doesn't need a whole lot of upgrades just to work well. So going on from Killian, we're going to go on to his girlfriend, Dina, who is going to be in Winterbloom. Strategic Sacrifices, so probably a little bit of Aristocrats effect, and Life Gain and Drain, so maybe a little bit more of that than we saw in the previous one. And we saw this creature here, which might be black, so we got the little Witherbloom icon there, and never ask what's inside the potions. Yeah, it could be something that seems disgusting, but it could be saving your life. You never know. And nice little Witherbloom effect there, and we're going to get our nice big Dina from that one there, which is a little bit different than what was on the original cover, whereas Killian, I think, was pretty similar. Okay, and this one as well. Oh, nope, it does look like this one has our little perforation to open it up a whole lot easier. I mean, look at that, so much easier. Okay, Starting off with our commander, which is going to be Dina, Essence Brewer. She's brewing up something. It's got either a pest or a tongue, something like that. 1 a black and a green for a 2/3 legendary Dryad Druid. Whenever you sack a creature, you draw a card. This triggers only once each turn, so it's a bit unfortunate. Being able to draw a bunch of cards would be nice. 2 and tap to sack another creature. You gain X life and put X +1/+1 counters on target creature you control, where X is the sacrifice creature's power. Okay, doing a little bit of boosting effect there to be able to get it, and it's in +1/+1 counters, where I think Gerard Golgari Lichlord, I think that he only provided a buff to himself until end of turn, whereas this one, you put it on to any creature, and then you get +1/+1 counters. Now, it is funny because it makes it difficult for Killian's deck, which kind of prevent things with counters on it from attacking you. It makes it hard for her to attack him. A little bit of an interesting kind of note on that one there. But yeah, you draw a card for the creature that you sacrificed with this, you make another one of your things powerful. And it's not Blix or Blex, it's going to be Gorma the Gullet. 1 a black and a green, 1/1 legendary pest frog with lifelink. Whenever another creature you control dies, you put a +1/+1 on Gorma. It gets bigger as other things die, okay? Non-token creatures you control enter with an additional +1/+1 counter on them for each creature that died under your control this turn. Okay, so you can sack a lot of your token creatures, and then when you cast a non-token one, they get big upon entry. Okay, and whenever creature dies, you put a +1/+1 on Gorma, so it's not as easy to remove. Okay, Gorma's just showing up and saying like, hey, I'm here. I'm gonna be doing good with all of it there. We'll certainly take that. Synergizes with Dina, sacrificing things. You can put the +1/+1s on Gorma or something else that you got. Merchant of Venom, 3 and a black, 1/1 cat warlock with menace. Whenever this ETBs, each player sacrifices a creature of their choice. Whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, put a +1/+1 on this creature. Okay, so put it into a lot of sacrificing deck. Getting I'm trying to remember what that one is. It's a vampire that whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent sacrifices a creature. So you can you bring this in, they sack a bunch of their stuff, and that includes yourself. This has that effect there of you have to sacrifice as well. So it's good if you have another thing on there, and then if you've got that vampire that allows them to do it, then they have to sacrifice a second one there. And because 7 things went, this gets 7 +1/+1s on it. That's kind of insane there. So potentially, I think a very, very good one there of, getting that effect, but then also potentially making it big. We did see this one previously when we opened up 3 double black, 5/4 demon with menace. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you gain a life. So just a little bit of tiny life gain. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses X life, where X is the amount of life that you gained. So, you drain them, somehow deal 5 damage to them, which lets you gain 5, then it deals another 5 to them, which can be pretty nice. Ominous Harvest, 2 and a black, sorcery, Gravestorm. Whenever, that sounds new, when you cast a spell, copy it for each permanent put into a graveyard from the battlefield this turn. Okay, so a storm effect, just a little bit differently. Target player draws a card and loses 1 life. Okay, so if you got a lot of stuff that went into the graveyard, you can, 5 things died, you can draw 5, lose 5, or if a lot of stuff have went into the graveyard, like 40, then you can just be like, yes, 40 things went into the graveyard, do Ominous Harvest, make someone lose 40 life. Yikes. Stensian Sanguinist, 1 and a black, 2/2, Vampire Cleric. Whenever you attack, target creature gains Death Touch until end of turn. And whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player, this becomes prepared. So making it so they don't want to block, because then they're going to have to get rid of one of their things. But then if they don't, then you get Exsanguinate. X double black sorcery. Each opponent loses X life, and you gain life equal to the life lost this way. So, it's each opponent loses, we'll say 5 life. Well, that's 3 opponents, then you gain 15. And, you got your Demogoth, Defiling Demogoth on there, you gained 15. Well, now all of them take an additional 15 as well. So, Exsanguinate can hurt a whole lot there. Feral Appetite, 2 and a green. Enchantment, attacking pest you control, get +1/+0 and have Death Touch. Okay, that's nice. Give a lot of your token creatures Death Touch so that someone has to get rid of something that's good, potentially, to get rid of something that doesn't. 1 and a green, exile target card from a graveyard. If a creature card is exiled this way, create a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with when this dies, you gain 1 life. So a little bit of the graveyard hate there specifically. I mean, you can hit the things that are good for your opponent, but if you get the creature, then it essentially has that scavenging ooze effect. Instead of putting the counters on it, you instead get additional creatures, which is nice there. So nice little graveyard hate piece on that one. And also just other things. Pest Rescuer, 2 and a green, 2/2 Dryad Druid. At the beginning of your each upkeep, if you don't control a pest creature token, create a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with when it dies, you gain 1 life. If you would gain life, you gain that much life +1 instead. Okay, that's nice, just getting a little bit of extra. Get it in something like Soul Sisters there, and, beginning of your upkeep, it's like, create a pest there. Soul Sisters activates, and you're gaining a few life, but then each one gives you 1 life, but then you gain an additional one, so you basically double up on the amount. You got 5 of them out there that do it, then you gain 10 life off of it, and somehow get rid of the token so you get another one each time. Seems pretty nice there. And I think it's Ophiomancer, I think, is the one where you get the 1/1 black snake creature token with Death Touch. It has that effect there. So I'm liking that they've got another way of doing that one. We saw this one in our opening, Riptrus Roaster, Devour 4 and a green, 3/3 Troll Druid, Devour 1. As it enters, you may sack any number of creatures. This enters with that many +1/+1s on it. Beginning of your end step, create a number of 1/1 black and green pest creature tokens equal to the number of +1/+1 counters on this creature. They have when it dies, gain 1 life. So when it ETBs, if you got a lot of pests out there, you can sacrifice a whole lot of them, gain life, put a lot of +1/+1s on this, and then you get a lot more pests at the end of your turn. You could also use Dina to be sacrificing things, to be putting extra +1/+1s on this so that you get more pests afterwards, and just try to overrun them a little bit. Eccentric Pest Finder, 2 a black and a green for a 5/5 Troll Druid with Trample. Beginning of each end step, if you gain life this turn, this becomes prepared. Okay, so that seems pretty easy with this. And it's at the end of each end step, so you can prepare it multiple times. The problem, though, is that its prepared spell is not an instant, it's a sorcery. Turnstones, black and a green sorcery. For each opponent, you create a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with when it dies, you gain 1 life. So for 2 mana, you could essentially be making 3 creatures there. Honestly, not too bad, especially, you put a pest in front of this, in front of yourself to protect yourself from something so that you gain life on an opponent's turn and get this prepared if you don't want to use life gain on your turn. Okay. Immoral Bargain. 1 a black and a green sorcery. As an additional cost, you sack X creatures, and then you destroy X target non-land permanents. Okay, so you get to choose what goes bye-bye based off of the number of stuff that you sacrifice. And again, if you have that vampire that whenever you sacrifice something, then they sacrifice something. I hope that's in here, and if it's not, that's just an easy card to put in here. Then it's like, okay, I'll sacrifice, 5 of my pests or something, and then they're like, oh, well, you've got to sacrifice, 5 of your creatures, and then I'm also getting to destroy certain things. And if everyone has only 5 creatures, you can just destroy non-creatures that way. Very, very nice effect. And, if you've got that vampire out there, it would make it so that, it would get around hexproof and all of that because your opponent sacrificed stuff. I like that removal spell, especially if you're making a whole lot of tokens. And we're getting the Turbulent Fen like we did last time. This cycle there of, if they control 8 or more lands, then you get the effect there. And speaking of Ophiomancer, here it is. Beginning of each upkeep, if you control no snakes, you create a 1/1 black snake creature token with Death Touch there. You send it in, you sacrifice it, you keep on getting it there. And it's at the beginning of each upkeep where I think, what was this one here? Yeah, this one is also the beginning of each upkeep. So if you've got a way to sacrifice a whole lot of stuff for free, essentially, then you can just get them over and over and over and over again just for free sack outlets, or for free sack fuel. So that's always nice. Toxic Deluge, good removal. Pay X life as an additional cost to cast it, and then all creatures get -X. It still hits your stuff, so good if you don't care about your stuff going away, or it's impactful for you not to have it. So that's nice. Tender Shoot Dryad gives you more of those removal, sack fuel there. Ascend, if you control 10 or more permanents, you get the City's Blessing for the entirety of the rest of the game. Beginning of your upkeep, you get a +1 green Saproling creature token, and as long as you have the City's Blessing, you get a +2/+2 for each of your Saprolings. So they're 3/3s, so if you sacrifice them with Dina's effect, then hey, now you're getting 3 +1/+1s on it instead of 1 from the others. But free sack outlet there, and it's another one of those at the beginning of each upkeep, but it's not checking to see if the other ones are gone, so that's nice. And are we getting a Fabled Passage in each one? Because that's another one there, so they might be really trying to control the price on Fabled Passage. But I've got the old version from original Eldraine, so we'll have to see how that goes, but it's always nice to get more of those. Blight Mound, attacking pests you control get +1/+0 and have menace, so kind of similar to the other one that gave it Death Touch. And whenever a non-token creature you control dies, you create another one of those pests there, so you can keep on putting more and more out there and then sacrificing them to be getting benefits for your non-token creatures. Bloodghast, it keeps on coming back. Can't block, has haste as long as an opponent has 10 or less life. That really doesn't matter too much in this, though. But Landfall, whenever a land you control ETBs, you can return this from the graveyard to the battlefield. Very, very nice recursion. Final Act, a little bit of mass removal. Choose one or more, destroy all creatures, all planeswalkers, all battles, exile all graveyards. Each opponent loses all counters. So you get to choose, kind of similar to a Farewell effect there, just in black. We're getting a little bit of Jadar, Ghoul Color of Nephalia. Beginning of your end step, only your end step. If you control no creatures with Decayed, you get the zombie with Decayed, can't block, and when it attacks, you sacrifice it. But again, more sack fuel there for you, because it's at the beginning of your end step. You get one there if you don't have it. Nether Trader, haste with Shadow. Whenever another creature is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, you may pay black. If you do, return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So again, another little recursive effect there. We've got a nice little sack outlet here. Tap, so Priest of Forgotten Gods, tap, sack 2 other creatures. Any number of target players each lose 2 life and sacrifice a creature of their choice. So you get to choose who has to sacrifice stuff, who gets to lose stuff, but then afterwards you get to add 2 black mana and then draw a card there. Honestly, very good with all of these different tokens that you are creating up. Smothering Abomination, 2 double black for 3 Eldrazi with Devoid. This is actually a colorless spell, but you have to use colors to cast it. Flying, beginning of your upkeep, you have to sacrifice a creature, and whenever you sack a creature, you draw a card. Well, you're sacking a lot of creatures, drawing a lot of cards. It doesn't have that once a turn effect like Dina does. So unfortunately, Dina feels a little bit weaker, at least in that regard, to this. But still being able to draw a card there, have another card to kind of take care of where she is weaker is nice. Vainwitch Coven, menace, whenever you gain life, you can pay black. If you do, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So not the same kind of recursion, but being able to bring back a whole lot of your stuff is nice. Witch of the Moors, Death Touch, beginning of your end step. If you gain life this turn, each opponent sacks a creature of their choice, and you return up to 1 target creature from your graveyard to your hand. Recursion, make them sacrifice their stuff. Very, very nice. Woe Strider, when the CTBs, you create an 0/1 white goat creature token. You can sack another creature to scry 1, so free sack outlet. You can escape this out to, be able to bring it back. And when this escapes, it also gets +2/+1/+1 counters on it, make it a little bit bigger there. But, it comes in with a little bit of a sack outlet on it. Yahenni, haste, whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, you put a +1/+1 on Yahenni there, making them sacrifice a whole lot of their stuff there. So you make Yahenni a bit bigger, and you can sacrifice another thing to give them indestructible to try to keep them around. It's a nice little big guy that you can get there. Awakening Zone, beginning of your upkeep, you may create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi Spawn creature token that has sacrificed this token to add a colorless mana. So every turn, you're just essentially getting an extra mana that you can use whenever you want. Blossoming Bog Beast, whenever this attacks, you gain 2 life. So another of that life gain that we're seeing there. Then creatures you control gain trample and +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn. So you somehow gain a lot of life. It's going to have a Craterhoof Behemoth type effect there. This just doesn't have haste. That's the only thing about it that's keeping it from being at that level. Gilded Goose, good old classic from Eldraine that I think got banned. Flying, ETBs, you create a food token, which can be sacrificed, and you can pay 1 in green and tap it to create more food, and you can tap this to sacrifice foods to be able to get a mana of any color. So, being able to ramp a little bit there with foods is nice. Michael Oth, getting more tokens for you. It has Devour 2. Every creature that you sacrifice when the CTBs, it gets 2 +1/+1s on it, and in the beginning of your upkeep, you create a 1/1 green sapling creature token for each +1/+1 counter on this creature. So you sacrifice, 3 of your creature tokens there. This comes in with 6 +1/+1s on it. It's a 10/10 that's creating 6 green saplings each of your upkeeps. Very, very nice. Pest Infestation. Sorcery, destroy up to X target artifacts and or enchantments. So big artifact enchantment removal, very nice on that one. And then you create twice X 1/1 pest tokens that does all of their stuff. So get rid of a whole bunch of pesky artifacts and enchantments on the battlefield, and then you get some creatures to kind of back yourself up with. Or in Frostfang, attacking creatures you control have Death Touch, so you can create a whole bunch of your tokens and then swing in with them so that they just get Death Touch. And whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. So they get the choice. Do they lose their creature, or do they let you draw a card? Because it's whenever, so that means each creature that connects gets the draw, which is very nice. Trudge Garden, enchantment, whenever you gain life, you may pay 2. If you do, you create a 4/4 green fungus beast creature token with trample. Honestly, a 4/4 for 2 mana can be pretty good. Whenever you gain life, sure, why not? Assassin's Trophy is going to be a little bit of removal. Destroy target permanent and opponent controls. That can be a land, creature, artifact, enchantment, whatever. They search their library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield and shuffle. Used to be really, really big when it originally came out as a removal. And it looks like we might be getting one of the Elder Dragons in each of these, because we're getting Belladroth Witherbloom. Super expensive, 4/4 flyer, beginning of each upkeep. Another one of those each. You create the pest token, and then you can pay 10 life to untap all lands you control. Activate only once each turn, but hey, you're getting a whole bunch of life. Being able to untap everything that you've got for 10 life, honestly, not that bad. We'll certainly take that. Casualties of War. Sorcery. Choose one or more. Destroy an artifact. Destroy a creature. Destroy an enchantment. Destroy a land. Destroy a planeswalker. Just hit a little bit of everything there. A little bit of that decimate effect. One of my favorites, old cards there from the Duskmourn. Not Duskmourn. Shadowmoor. That's what it is. The Creekwood Liege. It's a pumper. Other black creatures get +1/+1. Other green creatures get +1/+1. Beginning of your upkeep, you may create a 1/1 green and black worm creature token. So more fodder, but then you're also boosting the power of all of your stuff. And all of those pests are also, getting +1/+1s on them. So with some of the other effects, you can be getting those pests to be like 4, 5, 6 power on them there. It's really nice. Culling Ritual. Sorcery. Destroy each non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less. Unfortunately, that is all of your pests, but you add a green or black mana for each permanent destroyed this way. So you can get rid of a whole lot of your tokens there. All of those pests, well, you're gaining a life for each one that goes away, but then you can get a whole bunch of mana and potentially win the game off of it there. So it's a thought, it's a possibility. Guillaume, Master Chef. Trample, beginning of your end step, you create a number of food tokens equal to the number of non-token creatures you had enter the battlefield under your control this turn. So, including this. And you can pay 1 to sack a food, and target creature gains indestructible until end of turn, and you tap it. So, kind of like a regenerate effect, but, not really. But, protecting a whole lot of your stuff, which is nice. And I think that this was a former commander card there. Mazarek, Crawl, Death Priest. Flying, whenever a player sacks another permanent, you put a +1/+1 in each creature you control. So that's you sacrifice, them sacrifice, so you can hit a lot with that one there. Make your board really big. White of the Reliquary, based off of Knight of the Reliquary. Vigilance enters, this gets +1/+1 for each creature card in your graveyard. A lot of creatures in your graveyard, big guy. And you can tap to sack another creature, which makes this bigger, and you search your library for a land card, you put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So, get rid of one of your non-token ones, you make this bigger, get rid of one of your token ones, and you lose nothing, potentially gaining a life just to get a land. Now, the big thing is this says a land, not a basic land, so you get to pick whatever land you want. That's nice. Witherbloom Command, one of the commands that they had in it, modal spell, you choose 2, target player mills 3, then you return a land from your graveyard to the battlefield. Most of the time you're going to do yourself so that you can essentially get your graveyard, which in this case will be your second hand, more filled, and you get to take a land from there so that you always have something. You can also destroy target non-creature non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less. Probably not going to be doing that one quite as much, but you can use it to get rid of any tokens or whatnot. Target creature gets -3/-1 until end of turn. You're probably wanting to get more like -1, -3 there so that it's a little bit easier to remove something, or target opponent loses 2 and you gain 2 life there. So, a little bit of that drain effect. And going into the lands, we got Exotic Orchard to just generate a whole bunch of lands. Festering Thicket is going to be our cycling Swamp Forest. Grim Backwoods, more sack outlets there to draw more cards. High Market, more sack outlets to get some life. Llanowar Wastes for, mana fixing. Necro Blossom Snarl can mana fixing with potential to be untapped. Scryland, this is the filter land. Vernal Fen, a slow land. Viridescent Bog, another filter land. Woodland Cemetery, potential to enter untapped dual land. Arcane Signet, mana ramp. Soul Ring, mana ramp. Command Tower, mana filtering. Teacher's Pest, whenever this attacks, you gain 1 life. Return this from your graveyard to the battlefield taps. A little bit of that recursive effect there, kind of like Reanimating Skeleton, which is very nice in this deck. Witherbloom Charm, which we saw before in the normal packs there, because this has the different symbol on it. So these are all in the packs there. Can choose to sack a permanent if you do draw a card. Very good in this one here. Gaining a couple life, destroy something with mana value 2 or less, very much like the command. Terramorphic Expanse to get your lands. Surveil Land. Blood Artist, very good one here. Another creature. Whenever this or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life, you gain 1 life. A little bit of that drain effect there. Infernal Grasp for a little bit of targeted removal. Morbid Opportunist to be able to draw cards when other things die. Night Whispers, draw some extra cards, lose some life. Pawn of Ulamog, whenever this or another non-token creature you control dies, then you get the Eldrazi spawn. Now, it doesn't work with pests, but, things like Reanimating Skeleton effect where it's easy for it to come back there. You can get a lot of extra mana. Plumb the Forbidden, additional cost to cast this. You may sack 1 or more creatures. When you do, you copy this for each creature sacked this way. Draw a card, lose a life there. So, potentially doing a whole lot of that there. We saw it with the stuff before based off of gaining the life. Then I think it was gaining the life, or was it just no, it was kind of a similar effect there of, yeah, but this one was Gravestorm of everything that's gone to the graveyard this turn, whereas this is you have to sacrifice your own stuff. And this one is only you draw, and it's not targeted, so you can't make someone kill themselves by drawing. Umbral Color, Zealot, sack another creature or artifact to surveil one, free sack outlet. Viscera Seer, probably one of the best sack outlets there. You know, it's very similar to this one. Surveil, I think, is the better one, especially in this deck, but this is only 1 mana while this is 2. So that's why it makes it good. Zulaport Cutthroat drains whenever this or another creature dies from each opponent there. Each opponent loses 1, you gain 1. Cultivate to bring 2 land cards back from your graveyard. Elvish Mystic for a little bit of mana ramp. Sakura Tribe Elder for a little bit of land ramp. Spring Bloom, Druid, sack a land when it ETBs, and you get 2, so a little bit more mana ramp. Deadly Brew, each player sacks a creature or planeswalker of their choice. If you sacked a permanent this way, each player, so if you sack, you may return another permanent from your graveyard to your hand. So that's if you've got nothing, if you've got no creatures, then you wouldn't get to be able to return it. But it's another permanent, not another creature. So that's nice. You get to bring back an enchantment or artifact, planeswalker, whatever you want. Dina Soulsteeper, the original. Whenever you gain a life, each opponent loses 1 life there, so a little bit of that drain. Pay 1, sack another creature. Dina gets +X/+O until end of turn, where X is a sacrifice creature's power. So you can make this Dina just really, really big by sacking some stuff. 1 mana to do that isn't all that bad. Moldervine Reclamation. Another creature you control dies. You gain a life and draw a card. So, you know, that inverse effect where you can try to put it on things of like, oh, you know, I'm going to make a whole lot of my stuff die, so I'll gain a life, but also lose a life. But if you've got the thing that lets you gain an extra life whenever you gain life, then you can be going up by 1 each time as well. Mortality Spear, destroy target non-land permanent, you know, a little bit of targeted removal. Haywire Might, be able to exile target non-creature artifact or non-creature enchantment there. So, you know, a little bit of enchantment artifact hate there. You gain life for when it dies. Bajuka Bog for some graveyard hate. Haunted Mire, you know, more mana fixing. Path of Ancestry, you know, do a little bit of the mana fixing, get some scrying on. Study Hall, as we've seen before, to be able to scry a whole lot extra. Winterbloom Campus, scrying version of our mana fixing there. And just a whole bunch of our basics for swamps and forests as well with, you know, we've got the little stargates in the background there. Got some pests, the fungus beasts, worms, snakes, foods, the city's blessing, zombies, Eldrazi spawns, goats, and saprolings. We got them all. So I think this is kind of your very classic version of the black-green Graveyard Matters, working with your graveyard type of deck, and I think is a good introduction for people to be able to do and kind of learn that sort of effect, because even myself, you know, I've been playing Magic for years, I still have difficulty with the like, man, you know, like discarding stuff or sacrificing stuff and then, you know, having that be okay, you know, like, you know, I want to get more decks like this so that I can kind of get into the mindset of like, you know, it's fine for that to happen. Well, now that we've gone past the 2 partners there, I don't know if they're lovers, I'm just going to, you know, boyfriend and girlfriend, we're going to be going off to someone that we've seen actually quite a bit, both in Duskmourn as well as Foundations, and that's Zimone. And we have Primo in the background, who we did end up getting in our stuff. As we saw before, deals with a lot of +1/+1 counters and expanding X spells. So that's the big thing, is making X spells bigger, making them hit harder, and getting a whole lot of extra for them. A little bit of the Quandrix symbol there, and now solve for Y. Okay, so they're throwing a little bit of math at us there, which makes me think, you know, I did a whole lot of math when I was in school. So it's like, oh man, you know, blue and red is my favorite colors there, and I think that they've got the most beautiful cards from among them within the Strixhaven set here. We've got all the spirals, but I am very math focused, so they might put me into the Quandrix Academy or school or whatever you want to call it. Okay, oh, we've got a perforation on this one. Excellent. So I'll make it easier for us to be able to pull this off. Okay, Zimone, what have you got for us? A lot of X spells, a lot of +1/+1 counters. Okay, starting off with Zimone, Infinite Analyst. 1 a green and a blue, 0/4, Legendary Human Wizard. First spell you cast with X and its mana cost each turn costs 1 less to cast for each +1/+1 on Zimone. Okay, so making them bigger, like we said. Whenever you cast your first X spell and its mana cost each turn, you put 2 +1/+1 counters on Zimone. Okay, so it costs less, but you don't get the benefit of the 2 extra +1/+1s on it. And I don't think that you can't order it around because it just costs X, it just costs 1 less to cast, because that would take precedence first because it reduces its cost. You don't put the counters on this. So, it's helping out with future X spells, but, you want to try to do an X spell each turn that you're able to, because it gets Zimone bigger. You get more +1/+1 counters on her, and then because of that it makes your X spells easier to cast. Yeah, so you want to deal with a whole lot of +1/+1 counters on it. That makes sense. Primo, the Unbounded, as we saw before, X, double green and a blue for a 0/0 legendary creature, Fractal Wolf with Trample, enters with twice the +1/+1 counters on it that you paid for X. I mean, you've got Zimone on there, paying down, if you've got 4 +1/+1 counters on her, that pays for 4 of this. So for 3 mana, having it be reduced by 4, we'll say, makes this come in as an 8/8. Oh, that's a yikes. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control with base power 0 deal combat damage to a player, you create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token. You put a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the damage dealt. And that's whenever 1 or more deal combat damage. So you're creating one big thing afterwards. Yeah, that's going to be dealing a whole lot of damage. How many X spells do we got? We got 1 there. This one is not. We've got an Owlin Spiralmancer. 3 and a blue for a 3/4 bird wizard with flying and vigilance. Whenever you cast your first spell with X and its mana cost each turn, you may copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. There we go for our copies. I love copying my spells, so here's a way to do it, and a little bit of X spell support. Here's our second X spell, Expansion Algorithm. X and double blue, sorcery, proliferate X times. Okay, so, getting a whole lot of extra stuff out there. That's intense there. I definitely like that. Oh boy. Just putting a whole lot of extra +1/+1s across everything, I guess. Nexus Mentality, 3 and a blue instant. Choose one. If you control a commander as you cast this, you can use both instead. Okay, so we're getting another one of those. Move out counters from target non-land permanent you control onto another target non-land permanent you control. So you can, if you attack in with something, you could kill someone with it just instantly. You're just like, yes, I move 100 +1/+1 counters onto this guy. You're dead. Return all counters from target non-land. Remove all counters from target non-land permanent you control, and it's just move all counters from one to another. Okay, but you can still wipe someone out with that, especially if you put it on a commander there. Remove all counters from target non-land permanent you control. Draw a card for each counter removed this way. Okay, like you've got counters on something that you don't really need, and you can draw a whole bunch of cards from it. That can be nice too, just refill up your hand with a card. Okay, third X spell, Kinetic Ooze, X and green, 0/0, Ooze. Enters with X +1/+1s on it. And this is also a 0/0, so it goes with Primo. When this ETBs, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment with mana value X or less. If X is 5 or more, You also draw a card, and if X is 10 or more, double the number of +1/+1 counters on any number of other target creatures. Okay, so use the Moan to get this to get up really high. You destroy one thing, one artifact or enchantment, and then if X was 5, which probably is in this deck, you get to draw an additional card, and then you're trying to hit that 10 marker there, and if you do, you're doubling +1/+1s on everything. Again, yikes. Lattice Library, our 4th X spell, X and double green enchantment. This enters with X study counters on it. Whenever this enchantment ETBs, and whenever you cast your first spell with X and its mana cost each turn, you create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token. Put a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the number of study counters on this enchantment. Okay, so again, more support with the X spells, including itself, of creating more things to be able to guard you based off of how big this is. Now, this will work with the proliferate version of it there, because it enters with study counters, not +1/+1s on it there. So you got to be mindful of that one as well. Nev, the Practical Dean. So I wonder if we're going to get the other one there, Adrix. 2 and a green, 2/2, legendary merfolk wizard. Creatures you control with counters on them have trample. So again, we've talked about this, make them really big with the +1/+1s, and then you're hitting really hard with it. Whenever you cast your first X spell and its mana cost each turn, you put X +1/+1s on Nev. So you make him bigger and give him trample there. Again, all of those X spells that you're using. I will say before I continue, something that this is lacking so far is a bit of protection, in that it's seeming like they want you to play the X spells and make them really, really big. And the only problem is tapping out all of your mana for that makes you vulnerable for the crackback, but then also makes them vulnerable to counter spells. So that is something that you have to be mindful of with this so far. Unless there's something that, makes them protected, like protects them from counter spells, you have to be careful with how you run the deck. Yavimaya Bloom Sage, 2 and a green for a 2/2 Dryad Druid. Beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then if it has 7 power or greater, this becomes prepared. This makes it seem really easy for that to happen. And you get channel, you get a forbidden, a banned card on this here, like with the Emeritus of whatever it is that lets you play Ancestral Recall. Double green for a sorcery until end of turn. Anytime you could activate a mana ability, you may pay 1 life. If you do, you add a colorless. Yeah, so you get as much mana as you got life. So try to burst someone out with it. Striding Shot Color, green and a blue for an 0/4 druid, troll druid with reach. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, this creature becomes prepared. And run the play, an X spell. So what is that, number 5 for us? X, green and blue sorcery. Put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to X target creatures. They gain flying until end of turn, and then you draw a card. So making a whole lot of things a little bit bigger, give them flying, a little bit of evasion, and you get to draw a card out of its way. And yeah, sure, putting all of those out there. Brass and Finiscope, we did see this one as well. 4 mana artifact, tapped at double colorless. When you next cast a spell with X and its mana cost this turn, you draw a card and gain X life rounded down. Gain half X life rounded down. So, gaining a whole lot of extra life, which is really nice for this because, you got something like the channel there, which you need a whole lot of life, or just trying to keep yourself safe. This is a way to do it since there is so much. We've got our turbulent version of the Forest Islands there. It's looking like a big, honestly, toilet bowl there. All of the forest like slowly piling in with all the water around it. And Commander's Insight there. So this is, I believe, all of going to be our repeat cards there. So the not new ones, the reprints there. Commander's Insight, 6th X spell. Target player draws X cards plus an additional card for each time they've cast their commander from the command zone there. So, they've cast Simone a couple of times, and they've got some big stuff on her. Make it some extra stuff. 7th X spell, Ingenious Prodigy, Skulk, so can't be blocked with creatures with power greater than it. And we've got Simone in the background as well. This creature enters with X +1/+1s on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, if this has more +1/+1 counters on it, if this has one or more on it, you may remove a +1/+1 on it if you do draw a card. Potentially getting it with, pulling in with a whole bunch of +1/+1s on it would be really, really nice. Now, this does have power 0 as well, so it works with Primo because they don't have to be a 0/0. Pull from Tomorrow, I believe this is our 8th X spell. You just draw X cards and discard 1. Okay, yeah, and it's an instant, so you can play it on other people's turn. Benevolent Hydras, I believe this is number 9, enters with X +1/+1s on it. If one or more +1/+1s would be put on another creature you control, you put an extra one on it, so a little bit of that hardened scales effect, and you can tap this to remove a +1/+1 from it to put a +1/+1 on another creature, but they get the additional ones put onto it. Now, if you do transfer ones onto this, unfortunately, it does not add them onto. It does not get the hardened scales effect of it, but it's good. Unbound Flourishing, very good one to reprint here. Whenever you an X support card. Whenever you cast a permanent spell with mana cost that contains an X, you double the value of X. And whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, if that spell's mana cost or its activation cost whenever you cast an instant or sorcery or activate an ability, if X was in its cost, you copy it, and you may choose new copies for it. Again, so good there, because that's the thing. It doesn't create a second version of the creature, but all of your instant or sorceries that, if they want to counter it, because it copies them, because you've used X in it there, they have to use 2 counter spells for it instead, which is nice. Fable Passage, getting more of those ones there for us, so we'll certainly take more of those. Curse of Swine, I believe this will be 10 X's for us. Mass removal there, exile X target creatures. Each card exiled this way, they get a 2/2 boar instead. Dika, Fractal Theorist. I've got this one in my copy deck there. Magecraft, whenever you cast or copy, again, copy is a big one there. An instant or sorcery spell, you create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token. You put X +1/+1s on it, where X is its mana value, and you can pay 3 and a blue to have target creature token unblockable this turn. So have them go in and hit them really hard. Maybe, is this our 12th one? Entrancing Melody, gain control of target creature with mana value X. Again, with the Unbound Flourishing, being able to get 2 creatures, very nice. Is that X or less? No, it has to be exactly X, so you got to be careful with that. Perplexing Test, choose one, return all creature tokens to their owner's hands, or return all non-token creatures to their owner's hands. Whichever one you want, a little bit of mass board wipe there. Stroke of Genius for another one, maybe 13, just an instant, have target player draw X cards there, trying to make that a whole lot. Simone's Hypothesis, you may put a +1/+1 on a creature, then choose odd or even, return each creature with power of the chosen quality to its owner's hand. So, another mass removal effect there, mass bounce spell. Animus Awakening, reveal the top X cards of your library. So 13th X spell, I think. Put all land cards from among them onto the battlefield tapped, and the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. If there are 2 or more instant or sorcery cards in your graveyard, untap those lands, which is so impactful because there are a whole lot of the lands that enter tapped just because, but using this to then do that and essentially cycle through a whole lot of your deck and just get a whole lot of them out there. If you've got Unbound Flourishing, you double this up. Zimone's making it so you see more. You could thin out your deck a whole lot with this. Forgotten Ancient, and I think that was our 14th X spell. Forgotten Ancient, any player casts a spell, it gets a little bit bigger, and then you can move those +1/+1s to anything you want, like Simone, like Primo. It's really nice. I think this is going to be our 15th X spell, Fractal Harness, and it's an equipment, equip cost 2. Enters, you create one of the fractals and attach this to it, and whenever the equipped creature attacks, you double the number of +1/+1 counters on it. So yeah, doubling it just by attacking is really, really nice too. I mean, you do that with Zimone there, so you attack in, double the amount of +1/+1s on her, and then you play your X spell. Maybe 16th X spell, Goldvein Hydra, Vigilance, Trample, Haste, enters +1, X +1/+1s on it there, and when this dies, you get trap treasures equal to its power there, so make it bigger, have it die, you get a lot of extra mana there. Guardian, Augmenter, Flash, Commander, creatures you control get +2/+2, which, helps out with Zimone and, gives it hexproof so it can't be targeted quite as much, but it doesn't give her +2/+2, like the tokens, the counters on it there, because that's what matters on her, is the amount of counters on it. I don't think it's her power. Yeah, for each +1/+1 on her. Hardened Scales, we talked about this with Benevolent Hydra. +1/+1 counter gets put on something, an extra 1 gets put onto it as well. Very nice. 17th X spell, maybe. Lifeblood Hydra, Trample, enters with +1/+1 on it, and when this dies, you gain life and draw cards equal to its power. So another really good one to refill up your hand. Mana Bloom, I think this is 18th. Enchantment, enters with X charge counters on it. You can remove a charge counter to add a mana of any color. You can only activate that once each turn. So also on your opponent's turns as well. So unfortunately, you can't put it out there and then gain a whole lot back. But at the beginning of your upkeep, if this has no charge counters on it, you put it back in your hand so then you can replay it to get some more charge counters on it. Open the Way, maybe 19th X spell. X can't be greater than the number of players in the game. So, unfortunately, there's a limit to it there. But because of how things are, like with Unbound Flourishing, you can double the amount of times that this is, but you can also just reduce the cost of it as well with Zimone. Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal X land cards. Put those onto the battlefield tap. Rest go on the bottom of your library in a random order. So again, being able to filter out the lands from your deck is really nice. Ozolith, Shattered Spire. Not the Ozolith, but if they have the Ozolith in here, that would be really good as well because of all of this. I feel like it's a possibility. Legendary Artifact. If one or more +1/+1 counters would be put on an artifact or creature you control, it does Hardened Scales, gets an extra 1 on it, and 1 in a green. Tap this, put a +1/+1 on target artifact or creature you control. Can activate only as a sorcery, and you can cycle it away if you don't really need it there. Primal Might. What was it there? So I think this was 19. So maybe this is our 20th X spell. Sorcery, target creature you control gets +X/+X until end of turn. Then it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. So, making one thing really big. It is sorcery, so you can't combat trick it out on someone. I think this is our 21st X spell. Primordial Hydra, enters with X +1/+1s on it. Beginning of your upkeep, you double the number of +1/+1s on it, and if it has 10 or more on it, it has trample. So big stompy boy. I believe this is 22 for Silk Guard. Instant, put a +1/+1 on each of up to X target creatures you control, or as equipments and modified creatures you control gain hexproof until end of turn. So you can play this for 1 to just give them all hexproof there. That's nice. I believe this will be, 23 maybe? Steelbane Hydra. Lots of Hydras we see in here because a lot of X spells. Enters with X +1/+1s on it. 2 in a green, remove a +1/+1 on it to destroy target artifact or enchantment, which is very good. Just being able to remove all of them is nice. Maybe 24X spells, Altered Ego, Shapeshifter, can't be countered, enters as a copy of another creature, except it enters with X +1/+1 counters on it. But, because it is a copy of things, it's going to get their base power and toughness, so it can't be worked with Primo. Biomass Mutation, maybe this is 24. Instant, creatures you control have base power and toughness XX until end of turn. So, just this one you can blow someone out with it, because if you've got a lot of +1/+1s on it, it's like, oh yes, now I make their base power 10 10s instead of 0 0s, so they gain 10 power. Elusive Otter, a little bit of Strixhaven, not Strixhaven, Bloomburrow here. 1 blue for a 1/1 Otter with prowess. Creatures with power less than this can't block it there. So, prowess makes it a little bit bigger, but larger things can block it. But it also has an X spell on it. So that is going to be our, 26, is it? Grove's Bounty, X in green. Sorcery Adventure, distribute X +1/+1 counters among any number of target creatures you control. So get a lot of +1/+1s out there, make them bigger, goes out on a journey there, and you can bring it back, play it from exile later on. Goose Mother for, 27 maybe. Enters with X +1/+1s on it. Enters, you create half of X as food, rounded up, and whenever it attacks, you can sack a food to draw a card. Very nice there. Starts off as a 2/2, so make it big, sacking the food, getting some extra card draw. Maybe this is 27 in Hydroid Krasis. Again, this one used to be really big there during the Ravnica Allegiance era there and Guilds of Ravnica. I like that it's a Jellyfish Hydra Beast. Whenever you cast a spell, you gain half X life and draw X cards. You round down for each one. So if you only do one, then you get nothing. Enters with X +1/+1s on it, and it has flying and trample. So big one flying over, gain a little bit of life, draw a little bit of cards there. So I think that one was 27. We'll see if there's any more. Oversimplify, exile all creatures, and then each player creates a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token. Put a number of +1/+1s on it equal to the total power of creatures they controlled that were exiled. So you get one. Everything is gone. Everything is exiled, and then everyone gets one creature. And if there's a removal for one creature, you can get that there. Quandrix Command. Just our little command there. Choose 2. Return target creature or planeswalker to its owner's hand. A little bit of disruption. Counter target artifact or enchantment spell. Little counter. Very specific though. 2 +1/+1s on target creature. That could help out. Here, target player shuffles up to 3 target cards from their graveyard into the library. A little bit of graveyard hate in some effect, or you can shuffle your own stuff away if you need to get it. And our Elder Dragon, Tinazir Quandrix. Flying Trample, enters, double the number of +1/+1s on target creature you control. That can be very impactful for this, especially if you use it on Zimone. Whenever this attacks, you may have the base power and toughness of other creatures you control become equal to Tinazir Quandrix's power and toughness until end of turn. So if you have a lot of +1/+1s on it, then you can have base power and toughness really, really big. And it's all other creatures for it. And this is going to be the Zimone, I believe, from Duskmourn, the Ever Questioning, which you get Primo, but it's Primo the Indivisible this time. So beginning of your end step, if a land entered the battlefield under your control this turn, and you control a prime number of lands, you create Primo the Indivisible, a legendary 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token, and then you put that many +1/+1 counters on it. So if you've got another one that comes in, then you can replace it with this one here. And if there is an Ozolith in here when the old one dies, because it's a legendary permanent, then the +1/+1s go on the Ozolith, which is really nice there. And it gives you some examples of prime numbers as well to be able to get it. So, but it's kind of an X in the ability, but it doesn't actually do it. One that's going to be really, really good for all of these X spells. Astral Cornucopia, triple X for enters with X charge counters on it, and you can tap to choose a color and add 1 mana of each, 1 mana of that color for each charge counter on this. So, you get Zimone on it to reduce the cost of it by a whole lot there, and then double it up with Unbound Flourishing. You can tap it down for a whole lot of extra mana there. Yeah, it's really nice. Elemental's Palette. Whenever you cast a spell with X in its mana cost there, you put 2 charge counters on this, and you can tap to add 1 mana of any color, or you can tap to add a colorless for each charge counter on it. Spend it only cast spells that contain X. So more X spells that you cast with this in it, the more charge counters on it, which helps you pay for more X, so which makes it bigger and whatnot there, and cyclical effect. So I think I said 26 or 27 before. We'll just say that this one's 27. Hangerback Walker, a big one there, enters with X +1/+1s on it. Dies, you create a bunch of Thopters equal to the number of +1/+1 counters on it. You can tap it to add +1/+1 counters on it. You got some of those hardened scales effects, so, you know, just adding 1 on it will add like 3 or 4 instead. We'll count this as number 28, Stonecoil Serpent. Enters with X +1/+1s on it. Reach, trample, protection from multicolored, so, you know, a little bit harder for them to block it there, but make a really big trampler is nice. Alchemist Refuge to give your stuff flash, so being able to do 2 extra mana, and this, so essentially like 3 mana, if you will, to give some of your sorceries that have X in their cost, you know, so that you can play multiple of them. That would be nice. Exotic Orchard for a little bit of mana fixing. Flooded Grove for mana filtering. Hinterland Harbor, potential untapped. Dual land, Oran Reef, the Vastwood. Put a +1/+1 on each green creature that entered this turn. So, you know, getting a little bit of extra +1/+1s out there. Overflowing Basin for a little bit of that filtering. Rainslick Copse for, you know, tapped dual land. Sodden Verdu. Slow land for dual lands. Scry dual land. Snarl potentially untapped. Dual land. Yavimaya Coast. Another, you know, dual land, Pain land. Arcane Signet for mana ramp. Soul Ring mana lamp. Command Tower for mana fixing. Quandrix Charm can either counter target spells for, you know, unless mana leak, destroying enchantments, or making one thing a 5/5 base power and toughness. They're Paradox Gardens, the Surveil version of our dual lands for Quandrix. Terramorphic Expanse, Rapid Hybridization for removal. It's just 1 mana to destroy 1 creature. They get 1 in return, but it doesn't have all the abilities that the other one does. Same thing with Beast Fruit Within, but this one is target creature, while this is target permanent, so you can get rid of pesky enchantment, artifact, land even. Kami of Whispered Hopes has a little bit of that same Hardened Scales effect. 1 or more +1/+1s would be put on anything. You put an extra 1 on it. Can tap it to add X mana of any color where X is this creature's power. So you're going to be wanting to pull a whole lot of +1/+1s on this so that you could do it. Or, you know, you've got the Quandrix Charm to make this a 5/5, and then you can tap it for 5 mana. Nature's Lore for a little bit of mana ramp. 3 visits, also mana ramp. Tyvar Stand. Is this going to be our 30th one, maybe? We'll just say 30. Target creature you control gets X+X+X, hexproof and indestructible until end turn, so make it really big so that they can't be removed and you can kind of get rid of their stuff there. Decisive Denial. Target creature you control fights target creature you don't control, so a little bit of removal there. Or counter target non-creature spell unless they pay 3. So again, you either want to counter something early on or use it as a fight spell. Eureka Moment, I use this one in my copy one as well. Instant, draw 2, then you can put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. So, you know, copy it 3 times, you're drawing 8 cards and putting 4 lands onto the battlefield. That's nice. Quandrix Apprentice, Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, look at the top 3 cards of your library. You can reveal a land from among them, put that card in your hand, the rest going on the bottom of your library in a random order. So, you know, again, a little bit of pseudo mana ramp. It's just more of like filtering the lands out from your deck. Troyan Gutsy Explorer can add a little bit of extra mana, but can only use it in mana value 5 or greater or X spells. So, you know, a little bit of that one there, or you can draw cards, discard cards there. But 2 extra is always good. Simone Quandrix Prodigy from the original. Strixhaven, 1 in tap, can put a land from your hand on the battlefield, so a little bit of ramp that way. You know, pay 1 to just get a little bit out there, or you can pay 4 in tap to draw a card, and if you control 8 or more lands, you draw 2 cards instead, which is very good. You know, just having on a creature, pay 4 to draw 2. Opal Palace, they're putting +1/+1s on them for each time you've cast your commander from the command zone there, for the number of times that you've cast it. Yeah, add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. If it's spent to cast your commander, it enters with number of +1/+1s on it equal to number of times it's been cast. Yep. Path of Ancestry, you know, mana fixing, potential to scry a little bit there. Scrying on the campus there for dual land. Reliquary Tower, no maximum hand size since you're going to be potentially drawing a whole lot of card. Rogue's Passage to make one of your big creatures unblockable, so you just kill someone right away. Study Hall again for all of the scrying. Tangled Islet there, a little bit of mana fixing. Temple of the False God. You're putting a whole lot of lands out there, so having it of getting the extra mana is good. And then we get our basic islands and basic forest there. Oh, those basic forests definitely have that Quandrix effect to them there. That's really cool. And yeah, have a lot of fractals there, a lot of different types of fractals. And we get Primo, one copy of Primo, and food, frog lizards, treasures, beasts, thopters, boars, a whole lot of it there. So far, I think that this one has been my favorite, just, making the big things and focusing on the X spells there. I think that's a really fun mechanic to it. And now we're going to be moving on to my favorite colors, which is going to be Prismari Artistry, cast splashy spells. So maybe that's going to be like, I don't know, big spells, or the ones that have those, like, it's not Opus, it was the other one that lets you play them each turn. Create elemental attackers. So it looks like there's going to be a lot of creature tokens in this as well. Prismari Emblem. Blow the budget on special effects. Yeah, we got to make sure that we're showcasing how cool we all are. And we are going to have our copy of Rutha here with, she's got some fish along with her there, and our symbol. Come on, Rutha, we'll take you out there and put this off to the side. All right. Do you have one there? Nope. Looks like along with Silver Quill, this one did not get the little perforation in it, so we'll have to open this up the good old-fashioned way here. Okay. So what have you got for us, Rutha? Starting off, we'll have Rutha, Mastering the Moment. 2 blue and a red for a 3/4 legendary orc sorcerer. Beginning of combat on your turn, if you've cast an instant or sorcery this turn, you create an X blue and red elemental creature token with flying and haste, where X is the greatest mana value among instant or sorceries you've cast this turn. Okay, so making a whole lot of tokens I see there, just based off of mana cost. So yeah, the splashy spells means play big things, and then because of that, you get it. Now, the one thing that I do see with it is if there are a lot of spells that say, like, reduce its cost if this condition is met, or there's something like the Goblin Electromancer, which reduces the cost for you to cast them, they still have the mana value, it's just it's easier to cast them. So she's definitely wanting to just make a whole lot of tokens there based off of big spells that you've cast. It's only combat on your turn, so you don't get to create something on your opponent's turns. And, I saw Muddle behind her there, and I saw the otter, and it made me think of Lutri there, which is now, I think, legal, but it's specifically stated as banned as companion there, so you can have it in your decks. Muddle the Ever-Changing, 2 a blue and a red for a 3/3 legendary elemental otter shapeshifter. When you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Muddle becomes a copy of up to 1 target non-legendary creature you control until end of turn, except as Myriad. Ooh, that's good. You have something that is really, really impactful there, and then you attack in, get the Myriad triggers on it, and then you can get a lot of ETB triggers, you can get a lot of attack triggers, you can, or I guess not, because they enter tapped. You may create a token that's tapped and attack. Yeah, so it doesn't work on attack triggers because they enter tapped and attacking. So it's not them attacking there already. Then the exile of them at the end of combat there. But yeah, that could be, that's really good, the Myriad effects there. I mean, we saw how good those were with the the Lorwyn ones there of creating all of the extra ones. Yeah, I'm digging that there. And you get to copy anything that, let's see here. It's only creatures you control, though. That's the stipulation. But if they've got prepared spells, you could be potentially doing that. Inspired Sky Painter, blue and a red, 2/2 Lizard Wizard. I like that. I like that synergy on it, the rhyming scheme. The Lizard Wizard. Flying, when this ETBs, and whenever 1 or more creature tokens you control deal combat damage to a player, this creature becomes prepared. Maestro's Gift, 3, a blue, and a red. Sorcery, create a token that's a copy of target creature you control. It gains haste until end of turn. So if you've got a way to reduce those there and you copy this one with Muddle, then as long as one of the tokens hits, then if you've got a way to reduce the cost, you could create a whole bunch of extra copies of your stuff there as tokens. That's a possibility there. Just making tokens of your things, because they'll have the ETB triggers and whatnot, is nice. Abstract Performance, 5 and a blue. Again, the splashy, big cost to them. Exile top 4 cards of your library in a face-down pile. Then exile the top 4 cards of your library in a face-up pile. This is sounding a lot like Fact or Fiction. An opponent chooses one of those piles. Put that pile into the graveyard. Look at the cards in the other pile. You may cast a spell from among them without paying its mana cost, and the rest go into your hand. Okay. So they don't know what the first 4 are, but they know what the second 4 are, so they can base it off of there. Again, it's Fact or Fiction in a way, except they don't get to choose how it gets split, and some of them are not seen. Okay. I like that, though. Being able to just cast a spell. So, it could be a spell with mana value greater than this, though they might not want to do that there, but if it's the face-down pile, they might not know. And then you get to essentially draw the rest without actually drawing them. I like that one there, especially if you can reduce the cost. Durger Focus Mage, 2 and a blue for a 1/4 Djinn Monk. Here we go. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. That's what we're looking for. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell with mana value 5 or greater from your hand, so it can't be, the one that you play from this becomes prepared, and you get to play Brain Geyser to just draw a lot of cards. X, double blue, sorcery, target player draws X cards. Man, I wonder what deck has blue in it. So this one could actually go really, really well within the Zimone one as well, because it's got the X on it as well. And then also making the instant and sorcery ones also cost less. Doesn't work on the Hydras, though. That's the only thing. We got this one in the last one. Leitmotif Composer, 2 and blue, 2/2, Human Bard. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. You cast an instant or sorcery with mana value 5 or greater. You create a token copy of this, and you can pay 2 and a blue to make all creatures named Leitmotif Composer unblockable this turn, so you can get in, hit those extra ones, draw the extra cards there. I would imagine that this deck probably also has a Reliquary Tower in it or some sort of effect like that. Another one we got from our collector packs there, Fury Gale Flocking, which is going to be a big one there to make the big elemental, but this does have a reduction cost. 8 and double red, sorcery, costs 1 less to cast for each instant and sorcery in your graveyard. For each opponent, you create 2 3/3 blue and red elemental creature tokens with flying that attack that opponent this turn. If able, they gain haste. So if you do it prior to combat, then yes, they got to attack them there. If you do it after combat, then this turn, they can't attack. They're not forced to attack the next turn there. So, that's a possibility as well. And you're getting a whole lot of your tokens there. Maybe there's like a Panharmonicon in here as well of doubling the amount of tokens. Prismari Pianist, 1 and double red, 2/1 Djinn Bard. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you create a 1/1 blue and red elemental creature token. If that spell's mana value is 5 or greater, instead you create 3. Okay, that's very nice. Getting a lot of extras. Cast a big flashy instant sorcery, get a whole lot of extra tokens. Renegade Bull, 4 and a red. Ooh, getting extra copies of this one with Muddle would be really nice too, with that Myriad. Renegade Bull, 4 and a red, 0/5 Ox. Trample, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, this gets +X/+O until in a turn where X is its mana value. And whenever this attacks, exile up to 1 target instant or sorcery from your graveyard and copy it. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. So it doesn't say that you have to follow timing restrictions on it. So it's just, you may cast it without its paying its mana cost. So this attack, what it's essentially doing is you attack in and you exile the instant or sorcery from your graveyard so that this gets buffed up as it's attacking there. Okay, yeah, I dig that one there. Probably not my target for Muddle there, but being able to, you exile it, and then you may cast it. I'm wondering then, would that then put it into your graveyard because you cast it? I don't think it remains in exile, so then it might actually be pretty darn good there. Actually, might be a target for Muddle. Exile a whole bunch of stuff there, and then all of the Muddles get extra value off of it, and you're casting extra spells there. Coastal Peak, this is going to be our cycling island mountain there. Scorched Geyser is going to be our slow land for islands and mountains. Our turbulent version of this one here that we saw before, 8 or more lands. Fairy Mastermind, good one there from, what was it, March of the Machine, I think. Flash Flying, opponent draws their second card each turn, you get to draw a card, and then you can pay 3 and a blue for everyone to draw a card there, which is nice, potentially make other people have drawn 2 cards. Chain Reaction, deals X damage to each creature where X is the number of creatures on the battlefield, just kind of a mass removal effect on that one there. Determined, iteration, beginning of combat on your turn, you populate, so you've got a good token on the battlefield, well, you can get another one. Token created gains haste, sacrifice at the beginning of the next end step there. That's why it costs a less, because you got to sacrifice it later on. Harmonic Prodigy, prowess, gets bigger as you cast instant and sorceries. There, if an ability of a shaman or another wizard you control triggers, it triggers an additional time. That's pretty impactful there. Doubling up that panharmonic trigger. Shaman or wizard. So unfortunately not a shaman there, but wizard, that's a monk, that's a bard. We haven't seen too many wizards or shamans in this here. So we'll have to wait to see if there is, because we didn't see it there. Fable Passage again, getting more of that. Archmage Emeritus, a good one there. Cast or copy an instant or sorcery, you draw a card, instants and sorceries replace themselves. Brazen Borrower, Flash Flying, can only block creatures with flying, but you can use its effect to return target non-land permanent an opponent controls to their hand, so you can kind of get around something pretty easily there. Curiosity Crafter, here's our Reliquary Tower effect. Flying, you have no maximum hand size. Whenever a creature you can token you control deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. There's a lot of those in here, so that's good. Could probably also use this Curiosity Crafter in the Zimone deck as well. Dig Through Time, this is what I was talking about, another one of those where you reduce the cost of it. Look at the top 7 cards of your library. 2 go into your hand, rest go on the bottom of your library in a random order there, but it's 8 mana, so you get the 8 mana's worth of the mana cost. Replication Technique, demonstrate as you cast it. You may copy it. If you do, another opponent gets to do a copy for themselves. You create a token that's a copy of target permanent you control there. So, land, enchantment, artifact, creature, whatever it is that you want, and it's definitely worth it if your opponent doesn't have anything great on their field. Like if they've just got lands and, maybe some treasure tokens or whatnot there. Giving them an extra land or treasure token isn't going to be much when you get a double up on your thing. Rite of Replication, kicker 5. So you can, as an additional cost to cast it, you can pay the higher cost there, which I don't believe, I'd have to look to see if that goes in. I don't think that it considers that it's mana cost. But you create a token of a copy of target creature, but if it's kicked, you create 5 of those instead. So, you get a whole lot of them there to be able to go off and try to be able to get some sort of effect with ETB triggers, or, you create a whole bunch of those oxes and you're exiling a whole bunch of stuff so that they all get big, and then you get casting a whole lot of spells there. Thunderclap Drake, another one that reduces the cost of instants and sorcery spells, which is nice. Flying, 2 in blue, sack this creature. When you next cast an instant or sorcery, you copy it for each time you've cast your commander from the command zone, and you choose new copies for it there. So in and of itself, reduce the cost, and then afterwards sack it as you're casting it there so that you get the effect there. Blasphemous Act, big removal there. Again, 9 mana, so good for the the Runa trigger there. Costs 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield, does 13 to each creature. Chaos Warp for a little bit of targeted removal, put it into their library. Then they shuffle the deck, flip over the top card, and they get whatever they get. If it's a permanent, goes on the battlefield. Shuffles, then reveal, and they reveal it, so if it's not a permanent, then it just stays on the top of their deck, and they have to draw it. Creative Technique. Demonstrate, again, you can copy this if you have your opponents get a copy of it. Shuffle your library, then reveal card from the top until you reveal a non-land. Exile it, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. You can cast the card without paying its mana. You may cast the card without paying its mana cost there. So getting essentially 2 free spells would be really nice there. Cursed Mirror. Tap to add red. When it ETBs, you may have it become a copy of any creature on the battlefield until end of turn, except it gains haste. So it's a mana rock, but at first it is just a copy of a creature for you to be able to get something good. Dance with Calamity. Sorcery, another big spell. Shuffle your library as many times as you choose. You may exile top card of your library. If the total mana value of the cards exiled this way is 13 or less, you may cast any number of them from among those spells without paying their mana cost there. So you can keep on exiling even if you go over. You just won't be able to play anything, but you can get through a lot of your deck if you want to. Goldspan Dragon. Nice little one there, giving you some extra treasures. Flying Haste, whenever this attacks or becomes the target of a spell, you create a treasure token, and all treasures you control have instead, well, not instead, but they also have tap, sack it to add 2 mana of any color. You don't want to do it for the 1. Mana Form Hellkite, flying. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you create an XX Red Dragon Illusion creature token with flying and haste, where X is the amount of mana spent to cast that spell. So I believe that with this one, the amount of mana spent to cast it, I'll have to look because I think the reduction spells make it so that because you use less mana to cast it, it doesn't get it. That's the big thing about it, is they'll be smaller if you reduce the cost of things. Mirrorwing Dragon, flying. Whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell that only targets this creature, they copy that spell for each other creature they control that the spell could target. Each copy targets a different one of those creatures. Now, the big thing is this does have a little bit of protection on it, because the way that it's worded is that it targets their own things, right? Whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery that targets only this creature, then that player copies that spell for each other creature they control that the spell... Nope, it can target your own thing. So you got to be careful with this, because if they put a removal spell on it, then for all of their creatures that they have, they could potentially hit a bunch of your stuff as well. So got to be careful with that. Plarg and Nasari from the March of the Machines, I believe. Beginning of your upkeep, each player exiles top card of their library until they exile a non-land. An opponent chooses a non-land card exiled this way. You may cast up to 2 spells from among the other cards exiled this way without paying their mana costs. So 4 cards get exiled up. An opponent chooses one that essentially can't be cast, but then you get to cast 2 of the other ones there. So that's nice, but I mean, if 2 lands are revealed, then they choose one of the spells and you only get 1 spell. Redoubled Storm Singer, first strike. Whenever it attacks, for each creature token you control that entered this turn, you create an attacking creature token that's a copy of that token. Beginning of the next end step, sack those creatures, so doubling up the amount of fresh tokens there. Rionia, Fire Dancer. Beginning of combat on your turn, create X tokens that are copies of another target creature you control, or X's 1 plus the number of instant or sorcery spells you've cast this turn. They gain haste. Exile them at the beginning of the next end step. So again, copy one good creature there. ETB triggers, attack triggers there, because it's at the beginning of combat, so that's before you choose attackers, you create them there. So that's very nice, right? Yep, they just gain haste. Rousing Refrain, add red mana for each card in target opponent's hand until end of turn. You don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. Exile this with 3 time counters on it so that it just keeps on coming back and back and back, so you get some extra mana. Or you can suspend it earlier for suspend 3, 1 in a red, so that you get it in a few turns there and can try to do a little bit of blowout. I think, if possible, I might want to get more copies of this, because that sounds very good in some red decks there. Just like, yeah, every 3 turns there I get a big influx of, 3 to 7 extra mana. That could help out a lot. Surge to Victory. Exile target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard. Creatures you control get +X/+O until end of turn, where X is its mana cost. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player this turn, copy the exiled spell, and you can cast the copy without paying its mana cost. Oh, my goodness. So get in with a lot of hits there and make a lot of copies of it. Yeah, that can hurt a whole lot. Twin Flame. Strive, you can cast it for 2 in a red, and you copy it for every time, get new for each target beyond the first. Choose any number of target creatures you control. For each of them, you create a token that's a copy of it, except it has haste. Exile those at the beginning of the next end step there. So again, creating a whole lot of those. Volcanic Salvo, sorcery. This costs X less to cast, where X is the total power of creatures you control. Deals 6 damage to each of up to 2 target creatures and our planeswalkers. Man, being able to copy this a whole lot of times would be really nice there. And I mean, if you've got 10 power among your stuff, it's 2 mana for 6 damage among 6 damage to up to 2 targets. So 2 players, 2 creatures, a creature and a player. You're dealing 12 damage in total for 2 mana. That's nice. Ooh, and here we are. A little bit of Brunaclad. Telcor Engineer. Creature tokens you have has haste. So any creature token you make, haste. Beginning of combat on your turn, you create a 2/1 blue Phyrexian Mirror artifact creature token. Then you may choose a token you control. If you do, each other token you control becomes a copy of that token. It's so good there. You make them all something really, really big that you have. I wonder if that gets rid of the whole sacrifice it at the end of the turn, because for some of those there, because it says you create it there, and then you may choose a token you control. If you do, each other token you control becomes a copy of that token. So it becomes a copy of that token. So it's no longer the original token, and it doesn't get rid of it at the end. Like, it doesn't revert to the other one at the end of turn. So it might just override the sack effect there, which would be pretty darn good. And we're getting the dragon himself, Galazeth Prismari. Flying, ETBs, you create a treasure token. Artifacts you control has tap, add 1 mana of any color. Spend this mana only to cast instant or sorcery spells. So your treasures don't go away as long as you're casting instant and sorceries. So you can use your lands to cast your creatures and whatnot there. But as long as they're instant and sorceries, use your treasures there, because they're going to be good. Speaking of Opus, we've got Magma Opus. An instant, deals 4 damage, divided as you choose among any number of targets. Tap 2 target permanents, create a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token, draw 2 cards, and you can pay 2 blue-red hybrids to discard this to create a treasure token, which gets it into your graveyard so that you can then copy it with a whole lot of the other effects there, because it's a little bit too expensive to use it for its 8. And we're getting the command, the Prismari command. Choose 2, deals 2 damage to any target. Pretty basic. Target player draws 2, then discards 2. A little bit of rummaging effect there. Target player creates a treasure token or destroy target artifact. Probably destroy target artifact is the best one. And then the draw 2, discard 2 is probably also up there as well. So very good modal spell there. And one of the best ones to come out of these Strixhaven ones is Veyron, Voice of Duality. I've gotten a few copies of this, and I really dig it there. Magecraft, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. But if casting or copying an instant or sorcery spell causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, it triggers an additional time. Very, very good. So that includes its Magecraft effect there. And I'm just trying to think with the other one that we had here. Where was it? Yeah, that was too soon. Wasn't it in a different one there? No, it wasn't, because it had to be here. It was the one that copied. Fairy Mastermind Chain Reaction, no. Right here, Harmonic Prodigy. It just had different artwork than I remembered. Here's a wizard. So if an ability of them triggers, it triggers an additional time. Now, casting or copying an instant or sorcery doesn't have this portion do it. It has prowess to it, but because an ability of a wizard right here is triggering, it triggers an additional time. So it has, if a casting an instant or sorcery causes a triggered ability to activate, if you've got Harmonic Prodigy and Veyron out on the battlefield at the same time, then when that ability happens, you copy it twice. That's insane. Like, Veyron gets the pseudo prowess triggers there. This gets, 3 prowess triggers on itself there. Veyron is a monster of a card there, and I'm always glad to get more of those. And it's very beautiful with all of the fire and water there. So thank you very much for printing more copies of those. Solemn Simulacrum, sad robot there. You get to get a basic land when it enters. When it dies, you draw a card. The very basic one of it there. I mean, if you can make copies of it there, get more lands out, draw more cards, that's nice. And we're going to be getting into some more of these lands. Filter lands, Cascade Bluffs, Exotic Orchard for mana fixing, Ferris Lake for more mana filtering, Frostboil Snarl, potentially untapped dual land, Hall of the Oracles. I'm not too certain about this, so you can filter out mana, put a +1/+1 counter target creature, activate only as a sorcery if you've cast an instant or sorcery. Okay, so you can just make one thing a little bit bigger. Not quite as impactful on this. So this looks like it's a man land here. Yeah, Restless Spire. So it's a man land. Attacks, you can scry 1. Okay, Shivan Reef, a little bit of dual land action, Sulphur Falls, potentially untapped dual land, scrying dual land, mana fixing, or mana ramp there in Arcane Signet, and mana ramp Soul Ring, mana fixing, or mana fixing in Command Tower. Prismari Charm, as we saw before. Surveil 2, draw a card is nice. Deal 1 damage of up to 2 target permanents. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand there. Pretty decent effects on those ones. Spectacle Summit there to be able to surveil on the dual land. Terramorphic Expanse, get more. Aether Gale, return 6 target non-land permanents to their owner's hands. Get rid of them there. Arcane Denial, a little bit of counter. Spell action, you draw an additional card. They get to draw 2. Deep Analysis, draw a couple of cards there. Flashback, real cheap for just some life. Reality Shift, targeted removal, and then they get to manifest. Resculpt to exile something, very similar to the Beast Within effect. It's just a little bit bigger there, but it's exile artifact or creature. Treasure Cruise, another big one there for big mana cost, delving. Draw 3 cards. Abrade, deal 3 damage, destroy an artifact. Nice. My goat, the big score. Additional cost to cast it, discard, but then you get to draw 2 and create 2 treasures. That's nice. Mana Geyser, get a whole lot of red mana for tapped land that your opponents control, so you can try to storm off and win. Speaking of storm, we got Stormkiln Artist there. Gets +1/+0 for each artifact you control. Magecraft, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, you cast a treasure token. Now, the big thing about that is because it's when an instant or sorcery is cast, it affects it there. Veyron triggers. This is a shaman, so Harmonic Prodigy triggers on this. So Harmonic Prodigy trigger on this, you get 2 treasure tokens, okay? Then Veyron triggers, so you get another one, and the Harmonic Prodigy trigger on Veyron triggers, so you get a 4th one. So every instant or sorcery you cast or copy, you get 4 treasure tokens on it there. It's like you just get a whole lot there. It's so much. Okay, and we also have Throes of Chaos. That's a lot of people. Cascade, so can you know play other things there. So you just play this for 4, and then you get another thing a little bit later on, and then Retrace, you can cast this again by discarding a land in addition to paying this other cost, so this additional 4 mana. So it's like, okay, you just cascade into something there and potentially playing a whole lot of other things. Volcanic Torrent, another one with Cascade on it there, so playing more things. Deals X damage to each creature and Planeswalker your opponent's controller, X's number of spells you've cast this turn. So you cast a whole lot of spells, then you'll be able to do this for bigger and bigger damage there. Expressive Iteration, which was a card that was banned at one point there in Standard, I believe. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. 1 goes into your hand, 1 goes on the bottom of your library, and the last one gets exiled, but you can play that exiled card until the end of turn. So you're just saying like, okay, here we go. You essentially draw 1, and then you pick one that you want to play this turn to be able to play it. Original Rutha here. Just pay 2 mana, return Rutha to its owner's hand to copy target instant or sorcery spell you control, and then you choose a new copy. Yeah, we want to copy all of our instant and sorceries there. So another really good copy version. Stormcatch Mentor, Haste, Prowess, makes everything cost a little bit less. We did get all of that there. Felwar Stone, a little bit of mana ramp. Lightning Greaves, a little bit of protection. Haste and Shroud on it there, and you can move it around. Talisman of Creativity to get a little bit of mana ramp. Tapped Dual Land, Mystic Sanctuary. If you control 3 or more other islands, then you can return an instant or sorcery to the top of your library, so you get to cast it again there. So really, really good one there. Path of Ancestry, as we've talked about it before, mana fixing. Scrying Dual Land, Reliquary Tower, as we thought, is going to be in there. Another Study Hall for the Scrying, Temple of False God, get a lot of lands out there to get double the mana, and all of our basic islands, mountains, and we're going to have our elementals here. Lots of the elementals from Rutha, the 1/1 elementals there, some of the 3/3s, 4/4s. I'm just glad. Manifest, Dragon Illusions, Phyrexian Mirrors copies. I just really like that they provide us with a lot of the ones that come in the deck there. So because there's a lot of dealings with instant sorceries, a lot of copying, that they did have Veyron in it. Again, this one is also really up there for me with Zimone. So maybe Zimone, just with how it's working, might barely beat it out, but I really do like the copying and whatnot there. So lastly, we have up our Lorehold, our red and white. So it looks like this is going to, as we saw in our stuff before, have leave the graveyard. So it's going to have some of those Sultai effects of every time something leaves the graveyard, you get a benefit there, whether it's flashback, whether it's bringing it back to the battlefield, whether it's bringing it back to the hand, going into the deck, as long as it's leaving the graveyard. And buff spirits. So are we going to be making a lot of spirits and making them really strong? We'll have to see. Show off your school spirit. Well, just talked about how we're making buff spirits, so if we're making buff spirits, then I kind of would imagine that showing off school spirit with them being so buff would be beneficial. And we do have a perforation on this one. Thank you. Okay. So we're going to start off with our one Planeswalker to start off, because they did get their Planeswalker Spark in March of the Machine, I believe, prior to the whole shattering of things. So they were able to keep their Spark. Quintorius, History Chaser. 2, a red and a white for a 5 loyalty Planeswalker with static ability. Whenever 1 or more cards leave your graveyard, you create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. That's very nice. Be able to just get a whole lot of them just based off of what you're doing. This can also be your commander. And to add 1 extra loyalty, you may discard a card. If you do, draw 2, and then you mill 1 there, which is pretty good. Filling up your graveyard with this sort of effect there where you want stuff in your graveyard this time. That's nice. Drawing 2 extra cards. You discard 1 that you don't really want in your hand or you want in your graveyard. And you can use its better ability. It's 4, -4 spirits you control gain double strike and vigilance until end of turn. So if you are wanting to just swing in with something, you're going to be, swinging with the board, you're going to be able to. And I mean, it creates a lot of spirits. So we'll see how good this is at removing cards from your graveyard. Starting off with the other potential commander, Excava, the Risen Past. 2, a red and a white, 3/3, a legendary spirit horse with flying and haste. Whenever it attacks, return up to 1 target artifact, creature, or non-aura enchantment card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. So remove it from the graveyard. But you also get a spirit creature with flying in addition. Oh, it's a 1/1 spirit creature with flying in addition to its other types. So it becomes a creature, but it's if it's not a spirit, if it's not a 1/1, it replaces those effects there. Quintorius can help out with that double strike effect there, and you get your other 3/2s because something left the graveyard there. So not too bad of one to be able to kind of get in there and doing a whole little bit of extra stuff. So we'll certainly take that. Lordhold Archivist, 1 a red and a white for a 3/2 Dwarf Artificer for strike. Beginning of your upkeep, if there are 3 or more artifacts and or creatures in your graveyard, this becomes prepared. Okay. Restore Relic, 2 a red and a white sorcery, exile target artifact or creature card from your graveyard, and you create a token that's a copy of it. So that is a creature or artifact that is leaving your leaving your graveyard. So you get the Quintorius effect there, you get the copy on your field there. You just have to be careful of the prepared spell going away or not. We're also going to have Augusta Order Returned. 2 and a white, 1/3, legendary spirit advisor with flying and vigilance. Whenever it attacks, each player exiles a card from their graveyard. When 1 or more non-land cards are exiled this way, put that many +1/+1s on target attacking creature. Okay, so everyone chooses the card from their graveyard to exile, so a little bit of graveyard hate for your opponents as well, and you get to choose the one that you don't want and make one thing a little bit bigger. Okay. Ceaseless Conflict, 3 double white sorcery, destroy all creatures. Okay, so mass board wipe, then create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token for each non-token creature you controlled that was destroyed this way. So getting a little bit of stuff back just based off of what you had. Kind of stabilize a little bit for yourself while your opponents don't. Okay. Vanguard of the Restless, 2 and a white, 2/2 spirit knight with flying. Spirits you control get +1/+1 for each time you've cast your commander from the command zone this game. Okay, make your spirits a little bit buffer. Even you play 1 time, every time something is leaves your graveyard with Quintorius, you create then 4 3s with this. Whenever a spirit you control ETBs, like with Quintorius' effect, you may pay 2 and a white. If you do, return this from your graveyard to the battlefield. So it also has recursion effects as well. So that's very good as well. And it's just whenever a spirit you control enters. So you could have a card leave your graveyard, you create the spirit with Quintorius, pay the 3 to then bring this back. Okay. And we're getting another class, Advanced Reconstruction. 3 and a red, ETBs at the beginning of your first main phase, mill a card, then exile a card from your graveyard at random. You may play the exiled card this turn. Okay, so you mill 1, then you exile 1 to essentially impulse draw, kind of there. 1 and a red to put it up to level 2. Whenever 1 or more cards leave your graveyard, this deals 2 to each opponent. So yeah, getting that up there is really good. And then level 3, 1 and a red, spells you cast from anywhere other than your hand cost 2 less to cast. Yes, so you definitely, for 4, you get this, and then you can pay 4 to bring it instantly up to 3 to deal the damage to make them cost 2 less. That's what you want to see on this. This is a good enchantment there. I dig that one. I would like extra copies of that one, which I believe we're still in the new cards, so it's possible for us to get it in the packs. We'll have to see how much it costs individually, because I might just buy individual ones as well if I don't get a whole lot in the collector packs. Fateful Tempest, 2 and a red, sorcery, Council's Dilemma. We like that. Starting with you, each player votes for past or present. You mill a card for each past. Then Fateful Tempest deals damage to each opponent equal to the total mana value of cards milled this way. Exile the top card of your library for each present vote. Until the end of turn, you may play the exiled cards. Well, if you've got that with Advanced Reconstruction, now they're not leaving your graveyard, but they're being cast from anyone other than your hand, so they do cost 2 less, which is nice. So, a decent one there. We saw this one in the last one, which is really, really good. Noctimun Lore Spinner, 2 and a red, 3/3, Jackal Wizard, beginning of your upkeep. If one player has 1 or fewer cards in their hand, this becomes prepared, and you can use Wheel of Fortune. 2 and a red sorcery. Each player discards their hand and then draws 7 cards. Very nice. We love Wheel of Fortune here. All right, Relic Retriever, 1 and a red, 2/1, Spirit Monkey with first strike. Beginning of your end step, if a card left your graveyard this turn, you create a treasure token. So it feels a little bit similar to a Ragavan there, kind of cheapish cost. It's a 2/1, but this one has first strike. It's also a monkey, and being able to get the treasure token there, just as long as something left your graveyard every turn, then you get an extra treasure token. That's nice. Spirit of Resilience, 2 and a red, 2/2, Spirit Warrior. Whenever 1 or more cards leave your graveyard, doesn't add a whole lot, put a +1/+1 on this creature. Then you may have this become a copy of an artifact or creature card from among those cards until end of turn. Okay, so you can make this a copy of any of those that left. And you could make something really good there if you've got something good in your graveyard that left. And our Turbulent Land this time, a lot more like cinnamon buns. So this makes me a little bit hungry since I haven't eaten lunch by the time this comes out. And it looks like we've got a big one like a big game ender here that I'm surprised has gotten reprinted. But I guess since Craterhoof Behemoth has, maybe this one would as well. Moonshaker Cavalry, flying. ETB, creatures you control gain flying and +X/+X until end of turn. Rex is the number of creatures you control. It's a spirit. We've got things that help out the spirits there. Give it the double strike and then bring this in. Oh boy. Staff of the Storyteller. We saw this with Thrun. When it ETBs, you create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. Whenever you create 1 or more creature tokens, you put a story counter on this, and you can pay a white and tap to remove a story counter to draw a card there, which is fine there. Potentially being able to draw an extra card every turn is nice. Wave of Reckoning, a little bit of mass removal there. Sorcery, each creature deals damage to itself equal to its power. So I see this one being very good in like the abs and toughness matters there, where the toughness is a lot bigger than the attack, because then it's like, oh, well, your creatures don't deal enough damage to themselves. Fable Passage, as we saw with all of the other ones, to, get your lands. Angel of Indemnity, flying, lifelink, ETBs, return target permanent card with mana value 4 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So you get a 5/5 flying lifelinker plus an extra 4 mana or less thing. And then Encore, you can exile it from your graveyard to create a token copy that attacks each opponent this turn if able. Gain haste, sack them at the beginning of the end step, but you pay 8 mana to then get, 3 extra 4 mana or less things out on the battlefield. Very nice. From our Kamigawa Owl, the Dawn Sky, flying Vigilance. As it dies, you choose 1. You can either look at the top 7 cards of your library, put any number of non-land permanent cards, mana value 4 or less from among them, onto the battlefield. The rest go on the battlefield onto the bottom in a random order. So as long as they are 4 mana or less, you can put them out. Or you can put 2 +1/+1s on each permanent you control that's a creature or a vehicle. So if you've already got a wide board, then, well, you can put a bunch of +1/+1 counters on stuff. Or if you don't have much of a board, you can flip everything up and find every permanent 4 mana or less to be able to put it out. That can be nice. Archaeomancer's Map is another nice one there. ETBs, search for up to 2 plains cards, reveal and put in your hand. But whenever a land an opponent controls ETBs, if they control more lands than you, you can put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. So if you've got a lot of things that either sacrifice your lands, bounce them back to your hand, something like that, then you can use this to potentially be like, oh, well, I returned something to my hand. You put a land down, well, I guess I'm going to put down another land myself, which is nice. And it seems like there's a lot of land catching up, because we also have Claim Jumper, which is Vigilance, ETBs, opponent controls more lands than you. You can search for a plains, put it on a battlefield tapped. Then if an opponent controls more lands than you after that, you repeat the process once. Repeat this process once. If you search your library this way, shuffle. So you can get up to potentially 2 extra lands onto the battlefield with this, which is nice. Drum Bellower, a little spirit that flying, but untap all creatures you control during each other player's untap step. So if you've got a lot of mana dorks there, you get a lot of extra mana that way, or you attack in with things, then they essentially have a pseudo vigilance because they'll untap there. So a little bit of defensive play, but also kind of offensive as well. Guardian Faith, as we can see, a lot of these also have 4 mana or less, so can help out with that owl. Flash, Vigilance, ETBs, any number of other target creatures you control phase out, just save them from combat or anything like that. Treat them and anything attached to them as if they don't exist until the controller's next turn. Very nice. Guardian Scale Lord, backup, ETBs, you put a +1/+1 on another target creature. If that's another creature, it gains the following abilities until end of turn. Flying, and whenever this creature attacks, return target non-land permanent with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is this creature's power. So potentially having, well, the backup gets one of your things there, and then you can use this one so you can return a few things from your graveyard there. So again, more leaving the graveyard. Karmic Guide, another thing that lets things leave the graveyard. Flying, protection from black, Echo 3 and double white. So next upkeep, you have to pay that cost or it gets sacrificed. But when the CTBs, you return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield there. So again, more stuff coming out. Monologue Tax, whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, you get a treasure token. So another way to get treasures. It's not going to be quite as good as Smothering Tithe, but it is a decent one to have there. Remorseful Cleric, flying, sack it, and exile target player's graveyard. So they are showing a lot of graveyard hate in these, which I think is really good because we have seen, this one here deals a lot with graveyards. The Dino one used a lot with graveyards there. The Rutha one also dealt with graveyards a whole lot. So showing up with some graveyard hate is showing up like you need to do that there. Selfless Spirit, flying, sack it to get all creatures you control gain indestructible in a turn. So a little bit of a support card, protect all of them there. Sarah Paragon, flying, once during each of your turns, you may play a land from your graveyard or cast a permanent spell with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard. And if you do, it gains when this is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, exile it, and you gain 2 life. So you get to bring one thing back, which leaves the graveyard. So you get those effects there, and it's once during each of your turns. So that's very nice. Savine's Reclamation, more getting out of your graveyard. Sorcery, return target permanent with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. If this was cast from your graveyard, you may copy the spell and cast and choose a new target for it. So flashback cost 4 and white, potentially getting 3 things back for it with 1 card, just with a lot of mana. Skyclave Apparition there. ETBs, exile 1 target non-token permanent you control. You don't control with mana value 4 or less, so getting rid of a little thing there. And that's when this leaves the battlefield, the exiled card's owner creates an XX blue illusion creature token where X is the mana value of it there. So they get a little thing there on a delayed effect, so kind of like a Generous Gift, Beast Within effect there. It's just a little bit later on that they get, and it's based off of their mana value. Sun Titan there, again, more recursion. Vigilance, enters or attacks, return target permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Permanence also includes lands, so you can get extra lands back that way. Tokashi's Welcome, whenever 1 or more creatures you control, mana value 3 or less, enter, you draw a card, activates only once each turn. So, again, the little cards there that it's looking for. Tragic Arrogance is going to be one of our mass removals. Sorcery, for each player, you choose from among the permanents they control an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, and a planeswalker, and then they sack the rest of all other non-land permanents. So getting rid of a whole lot of stuff there is very nice. White Orchid Phantom, flying first strike, ETBs, destroy up to 1 target non-basic land. Its controller may search for a basic land, put on battlefield, tap, then shuffle. So nice, getting rid of, an impactful land that they control. Atsushi, the Blazing Sky. Flying Trample, when it dies, you choose one. You either exile the top 2 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those, or you can create 3 treasure tokens. So, more things to play and potentially get the effects from that class, or, you want to get some extra mana to play things with. Conspiracy Theorist. Whenever this creature attacks, you may pay 1 and discard a card. If you do, draw a card there. A little bit of, a little bit of card rummaging there. Whenever you discard 1 or more non-land cards, you may exile one of them from your graveyard. If you do, you may cast it this turn. So, discarding cards and potentially being like, yep, I can still cast them there. That's always a nice one there. This was another good one from the original Lorehold commander deck, I believe. Lelia, the Blade Reforged. Haste. Whenever it attacks, you exile the top card of your library, and you can play it this turn. So a little bit of impulse draw. Whenever 1 or more cards are put into exile from your library and or your graveyard, put a +1/+1 on Lelia. So, cards exiled from your graveyard there with a lot of these effects there. Lelia gets bigger and your impulse drawing there, and she can do a whole lot of that. So getting some copies of her is really nice. And it looks like we're getting another one of our lieges, this time the Balefire Liege. Other red creatures get +1/+1. Other white creatures you can roll get +1/+1, making a whole lot of big things bigger. Whenever you cast a red spell, this creature deals 3 damage to target player or planeswalker. So every red spell that you cast has an additional, I cast Lightning Bolt. And whenever you cast a white spell, you gain 3 life. So you get a little bit back. You cast a red-white spell, you get both effects there, which is nice. Hoffrey, Ghost Forge. Spirits you control get +1/+1 and have trample and haste. Well, that's really good. You're creating a whole lot of spirits. A lot of these in it are spirits in it of themselves. So, making them bigger, getting them haste so that they can attack in right away. A lot of them have like 3/2, at least the tokens that you get from Quintorius. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you exile it. If you do, you create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a spirit in addition to its other types, and has, when the token leaves the battlefield, return the exiled card to the owner's graveyard. Oh, that's not too bad. There. Creature dies. You get the spirit that's a copy of it. When that copy dies, you bring the card back into your graveyard, which you can then bring back from the graveyard in some way. Yeah, that's a pretty nifty card there. I know it's from the original Strixhaven decks there, which I still need to get, but I'm glad to get that. Quintorius Loremaster, another Quintorius. Vigilance, beginning of your end step, exile target non-creature non-land card from your graveyard to create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token, as we've seen before with those. 1, a red and white, tap, sack a spirit, choose target card, exiled with Quintorius. You may cast that card this turn without paying its mana cost. If that spell would be put into a graveyard, put on the bottom of the owner's library instead. Okay. Very interesting. So, end step, you have the thing leaving the battlefield. So, if you've got the Quintorius Planeswalker of those ones there, as well as this one, you get 2 3/2 red and white creature tokens. Then you can sacrifice one of them on a later turn, or just whenever you can, to then take that card exiled with it, cast it without paying its mana cost, and it goes on the bottom of your library. But it's just like, that's a lot of free value that you're getting on that one there. Venerable Warsinger, 1, a red and a white. What am I talking about? Just Spirit Vigilance Trample. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you may return target creature card mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the amount of damage that's dealt to that player. Okay, yeah, more bringing stuff out of your graveyard to be able to play it again there. Bitterthorn, Nissa's Animist. I know I did not get this one there, so getting a copy of it is nice. Living Weapon, you create a germ that this is attached to. The equipped creature gets +1/+1. And whenever the equipped creature attacks, you may search your library for a basic land, put it on battlefield, tap, then shuffle. So you are getting a lot of mana ramp there by just attacking in with things there, and you're just like, yep, more land, more land, more land. We'll certainly take that. Currency Converter. Whenever you discard a card, you may exile that from your graveyard. So you discard it, you can exile it, so you get the effects with Quintorius there. Pay 2 and tap, draw a card, then discard a card. That's discarding the card. And you can tap, put a card exiled with this artifact into your graveyard. If it's a land card, create a treasure token. If it's a non-land card, create a 2/2 black rogue creature token. Very, very interesting. There are definitely ways that I could see about doing this. I'll have to think about this one there. I think that this one has good uses for things. And now on to the lands. Battlefield Forge, we've got our dual land red-white. Clifftop Retreat, potentially untapped dual land. Ooh, Amiria the Sky Ruin, we got an extra of this. If you control 7 or more planes, you just return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield on upkeep. No restrictions, just any creature. Very, very good card. Exotic Orchard, mana fixing. Not mana fixing. Mana fixing. Fairycom Snarl, potentially untapped dual land. Glittering Massif, the Cycling dual land. Lotus Field enters tapped, but when you put it in, you get a sack 2 lands, can tap for 3 mana. But again, this is what's going to be good for that Archaeomancers in the map and the Clifftop viewer, or whatever, the Claim Jumper, that's what it was, because you want to have less lands. Radiant Summit, the slow land. Rugged Prairie, the what is it? This is mana fixing, right? I can't remember the stuff. More mana fixing, Scry dual land, mana ramp, more color, like having all of your colors, basically dual land, primary research. When the CTBs return target non-land permanent with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, so stuff leaving your graveyard, that's good. Beginning of your end step, if a card left your graveyard this turn, draw a card. Yep, we definitely want that. Seize the Spoils, we saw this one here, just a lesser version of Big Score. Discard 1 card, you get 2, draw 2, then you get 1 treasure. Kirill, history buff. He's one of the new students in this here. Whenever 1 or more, and we haven't seen him yet, so let's go over the full thing. Red and a white, 2/3, legendary vampire cleric. Whenever 1 or more cards leaves your graveyard, Kirill becomes prepared. It's going to happen a lot. Pack a punch, 1, a red and white. Sorcery, mill card, put 2 +1/+1s on target creature, and they gain trample until end of turn. So, yep, make something a little bit bigger. Fill up your graveyard so that things can leave it there. Makes sense. Lorehold Charm. Each opponent sacrifices a non-token artifact of their choice. That's pretty good there. Non-token, so it's got to be one that they have in there, so it can't just be like a food, a clue, treasure, anything like that. It's going to be a solid, good artifact. Return target artifact or creature with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. That one's also good because it's getting all of those effects. Creatures you control get +1/+1 and trample until end of turn, and a finisher. Laurel Charm, also really good one there. Fields of Strife, Surveil dual land, Terramorphic Expanse. Pick which one you want. Kami of the Ancient Law, sack and destroy an enchantment. That's good. Path to Exile, another good one there for targeted removal. Secret Rendezvous, drawing some extra cards. Swords to Plowshares, more targeted removal. Teshar, Ancestor's Apostle, whenever you cast a historic spell. So, artifacts, legendary sagas. There's a lot of artifacts in here. Return target card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, so more of bringing stuff out of your graveyard. Anger, give all of your stuff haste as long as this is in your graveyard and you have a mountain. Faithless Looting, more looting effects, draw 2, discard 2, really good. Squee, Goblin Nabob, a good one there of, like discarding it if you really want to. Beginning of your upkeep, you may return this from your graveyard to your hand. Very much enjoy this. Okay, original Quintorius, Field Historian. Spirits you control get +1/+0, more buffing of the spirits. Whenever 1 or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. So he's been doing that from the very, very beginning there. He's just put that on his generic effect. It's literally the exact same text. So get all of them out there and you're getting a whole lot of 3/2 spirits. Rip Apart, 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker, or destroy target artifact or enchantment. A little bit of removal there. Containment Construct, whenever you discard a card, you may exile it from your graveyard. If you do, you may play that card this turn. So, a little bit more of that kind of madness effect. Felwar Stone, a little bit of mana ramp. Millikin to mill some cards to get some extra mana there. So you want cards in your graveyard there. Mind Stone, again, more mana ramp there on an artifact is good. And bringing a whole lot of stuff back for 3 or less mana, being 2, you can keep on doing that to be able to get more mana, or you can be drawing cards with it. Patchwork Banner, here's another one that is 3 mana or less. Enters, you choose creature type, spirits, creatures you control get +1/+1, and it's also a mana rock there, very nice. Perpetual Timepiece, mill 2 cards, put them in your graveyard so you can be able to bring them back. 2, exile this artifact, shuffle any number of target cards from your graveyard into your library, so you're returning a whole bunch of, removing a whole lot of, or leaving your graveyard there is nice. Lorehold Campus, Scrying Land, Mistveil Plains. Put target card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library. Activate only if you control 2 or more white permanents, which is very good. Again, it's more things that are leaving your graveyard, which is nice. Tapped dual land, the study hall for the scrying, and all of our basic plains, basic mountains, and all of our tokens of lots of 3/2 spirits here. Some other spirits, some treasures, Phyrexian germs, illusions, copies, and rogues. So, surprisingly, a red-white deck that I am super fond of there. I think that it has a really cool way that it's working about it, and another way to be like, hey, don't be scared of having stuff in your graveyard. Like, we can work around that there. So I think that these were all really nifty decks. I think that the white-black one might have been my least favorite, but I think it's still a very interesting deck with all of the goading, all of the enchantment stuff that is on it there. And then we got 2 Graveyard Matter decks, which is very, very interesting in it there. And then these 2 are really, really close to each other because I just really like what they're doing with the X spells and with the creating all of the tokens by playing big spells and playing big spells for free from your graveyard. So kind of another Graveyard Matters type of deck. So all in all, like, I think that these were a very solid 5 bunch. A lot of good reprints like Land Tax, Moonshaker Cavalry, Claim Jumper, and then we got the Fabled Passage in each one there. Like, there is some good stuff in here, and I think that these are very worthwhile in and of themselves to get, so I'm glad that I ended up getting them. So thanks for coming on for this review. I hope that you have a wonderful afternoon, evening, or night, and until you do come back for another one of these, please take care of yourself, and I'll see you on the next one.